Welcome to the FATED ARPG podcast, episode number 132. We're just shy of 2 days away from the official launch of the 3.24 Necropolis League. We've had teasers, we've had interviews, we've had scarabs. There's so much to talk about, so just one quick ado. If you've supported financially via YouTube, Twitch, or Patreon, you're shouted out on the end screen, and you can get on the end screen by purchasing a subscription before the new month starts. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. Here's Balor. How are you doing?
Fantastically.
That's
Baby Poison SRS is the best play it's ever been. It's hugely buffed. So now I'm excited and I'm starting SRS again, and I want to start now. Right now.
All right, can't wait to talk about it. We got another person back from 2 weeks ago. Snap is here again.
Welcome
on the podcast.
Man? Yeah, it's been 2 weeks since the last Epoch episode with Snoobe. We're back to here to talk about Necropolis. Should be a lot of fun.
The real juice. And of course, we got with us someone who's been avidly testing a lot of different League starters and has made a very informed decision after his weapon of choice has been destroyed by GGG, apparently. Welcome with us, Subtractum.
Hello.
With a thumbnail face.
It won't be the last time the
How's it
League
going?
site gets destroyed.
I'm very purple. Camera went crazy.
That's what these cameras do. Well, should we just start by prefacing this with what an absolute treat it is to listen to Mark Roberts, game designer of Path of Exile 1.
Oh, that was so good.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Mark talk about the game, you can clearly see how passionate he is, and you can see like how much control he has over the direction of the game. So he's like the guy, right? That's pushing the direction of Path of Exile. And there's like this thing in our Discord we talk about, like I think during the dark days of PoE, we talk about the Kalandra, that kind of thing. You can maybe it was like when Mark wasn't there, right? Mark was working on PoE too. Like that was the the thing we talk about. So it's definitely really cool having Mark talk about like all the stuff that he's doing and how good he wants to make the game. It's definitely really inspirational, right?
Yeah, Mark being the director, I think, is just going to be so good for the future of the game. Like he's clearly, like I got the impression when I talked to him last year, like he very clearly is a player of the game. He's like, yeah, I want to hit 100 last league, and and like he speaks clearly from experience. And yeah, crazy enough, as Boeing is learning, if you're in charge of something, you should probably know what the hell you're doing.
Probably actually play the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I specifically like the part where and I don't know whether this coincides with the huge success of Last Epoch and the delay of Path of Exile 2, but I really like the part where they continuously keep emphasizing that this is the time where they're not sticking to their beliefs that they held on for so long, right? But they like to hold on to them, but they're also like, if there's a good reason to reevaluate our approach and to question what we've been doing and like what we're working on, then this is the time. And it's so refreshing to see them do these simple quality of life things, like being able to just walk over the breach hands and everything that, from my point of view, has been dragging my game experience down for such a long time, because there's all these little things that build up so much frustration. And so many of them are getting alleviated that it's just fantastic. So definitely a fan of that direction.
Yeah, I mean, as a one of the most interesting things that like perspectives that you can have is just think about how old this game is. Like there are very few developers that are out there that honestly have the privilege of being able to have a game that's successful 10 plus years down the road. And like, we see especially companies like Riot, Blizzard with World of Warcraft, I guess, like there's not that many franchises out there that have been around that long that have just like been able to innovate and change things in a really fundamental way. And I think that's important to actually grow. And like the crazy thing is PoE's growth has kind of just always been really solid and just keeps getting better in the past couple of years. And that's just so wild for something that started so slowly, so slowly, and they're just willing to actually look at fundamental questions and try to keep the game fresh. And that's like, you need to do it, right? Like imagine if a game just didn't have, if their leagues were just look at their original leagues, right? Like Nemesis or Ambush or something, and like just how will I don't like someone who's a programmer, like how the hell are they making these changes to the system? Like it blows my mind the fact that it's not actually just like, you know, League of Legends spaghetti code. It's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't all just fall apart, right? Like,
yeah, I don't know how they do it.
To be fair, sometimes it does.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it falls apart a little. My big takeaway from that is something I already knew, but I was really happy to see because I feel like I only saw this first in person. Before ExileCon 1, I did quite often find myself slipping into what I now call like the Reddit narrative of thinking in my head, like, do they even play the game? Do they even know what they're doing? Why are they doing these stupid things? And then those of us who like went to ExileCon and met a bunch of developers and hung out and talked to people, that thought leaves your mind instantly. None of us came back from there and was like, they don't care. Like that didn't happen because we met them and was like, oh, everybody here is passionate. But it's hard to get that across. And so I understand why people sometimes think that. And this interview left me with that feeling of even the things I disagreed with, that he was like, oh, this is the direction we're taking. I'm like, I wish they went the other way. Even those things, by the time he's finished talking about it, I don't feel ignored. I feel like he's seen the thing. He understands the side that he hasn't agreed with. He's really given it like thought and has a proper understanding of what's going on. And he's just occasionally he's choosing a direction that I wouldn't have chosen, but he's probably better than me at it. So I don't feel upset about it anymore. I'm just like, oh, I don't feel ignored. I feel like he understands the problem we're having. He just wants a different solution. So he's going to work on it. Great.
Yeah. I have the utmost respect for Mark, right? But I think the thing that I might bring up is I don't know that the prevailing sentiment was like that they don't care, or I think the main thing that some people were having concerns about in the past was like that they might be spreading themselves a little bit too thin, going in two different directions with two different projects. That's kind of like the main thing. But I think like in Toda, or not like since Toda, and then you have Affliction and now Necropolis, you can clearly see like I feel like the level of effort in the leagues is like definitely gone up. Like you can it's just night and day to me coming from Crucible. And then like the level of effort and stuff that goes into something like Necropolis, like to me, it's night and day. Like this is just way bigger scope. Like the changes are more massive and everything is just like a lot more exciting to me as a player.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not sure whether the sentiment was so much that they don't care, but what I felt personally that I could relate to, obviously it was a lot exaggerated, a lot more intense in the community, what I perceive, but there was also a little bit of a feel of a disconnect for me around, let's say, Calandra, Crucible, that time around, that the game that we play and perceive is a different game than what they are perceiving, what they're working on. That was a sort of misalignment in the perception. And now it feels like there's way more overlap between like what they are working on and the game that is actually being played, which I think that may have just come from interviews with Chris. And I love Chris, don't get me wrong. I don't want to like drag Chris down. Just Chris was doing a lot of the interviews at a time where he was essentially already completely out of the game design loop and only the organizational CEO and doing the financial side of things. And then a lot of the times answers felt like Chris was doing the dev check or talking out of his like 10, 15 years back experience with Diablo 2 and his philosophies that he built from there, which all are valuable. But yeah, that's just a lot of players couldn't relate to that as much as to the stuff that Mark is saying.
Yeah, definitely. I super resonate with that. I mean, it's also super refreshing to hear like all of the talk that he's saying about like player agency. There's a huge focus on that. And I think a lot of players just really love to hear that. Like they want to focus on a game that like you want to play. Instead of like trying to force people down one path, just like creating the most choices is super awesome. And I think it's definitely a great direction to take the game. And so I think hearing that, like hearing Mark say that like they're really after that agency. I think that's like a super, super good thing that they're trying to like drill down on, and the Scarabs I think reflect that on the new expansion for sure.
Yeah. Like despite the fact that, you know, they claim that it didn't take too many resources, I think that was it Crucible, that one patch. I mean, I think Snap probably knows what I'm going to say. Like that one patch where like 75% of the text, it was collapsed initially, but if you expanded it, and I know it was just like one guy, but like how much Ruthless was mentioned like all the time and how unpopular at the end of the day. I think we've heard that it's like the estimate is like just 1 to 2% of the population from the data that we have. And that's like fine, you know, it didn't take that many resources, but I think the fact that it was talked about so much and we saw the anemic, or not even like I don't want to like be too spoiled because like compared to any other game, we are so spoiled. Like I used to play Overwatch, right? Overwatch got nothing for like 4 years. And then they're just like, oh yeah, fuck you, Overwatch 2, get wrecked. And then, oh yeah, PvE, yeah, right. Give me more money, let me buy a yacht. Like, you know, let's be fair. But compared to how spoiled we were in the past, particularly, you know, I talk about this all the time. Like I do miss the really big end game reworks we used to get with like, I bring up, you know, it could just be nostalgia because I do think the modern Atlas is better, but like the original Shaper versus Elder Atlas and all that stuff, you know, it's kind of annoying and bullshit, but like it was really cool conceptually. And then they're like, oh yeah, guess what? We fooled you. There's actually 10 acts now. And then guess what? Oh, we fooled you. There's actually, you have to, you know, do the 32 stones and leapfrog all this bullshit. And then you get Cirrus and you get to do all that. And like how crazy that they're willing to redo all that. And then we went from that to, we kind of had that, like the dearth of like I have to say it.
It's the Dark Ages.
The Calandra, right? We had the Calandra. Yeah, with the Dark Ages. And it's just like, man, how Calandra was so half-assed, right? You know, it's cool ideas in there, but like on release, that was so rough. And it going from that to Calandra, and like clearly we're kind of coming out of that now. But Calandra and Ruthless being talked about all the time. I think people were just kind of, you know, upset and everything. And now we get Affliction, which is probably the most popular league of all time, which is the opposite of Ruthless. I'm not surprised that you know, they're learning from that, right?
It's the Alkaiser clip, you know, with the Awakened Mirror of Calandra, but actually in PoE. That's Affliction. That's
well, Affliction did have the well, so there's that.
It's true.
Just out of curiosity, before we move into teasers, or we can also talk a little bit about the PoE 2 interview, but specifically about the PoE 1 interview yesterday with Mark. Balor, you said even when you disagree, you empathize and you feel what Mark is saying. Can you point to any specific point that was made where you disagree?
Doors.
Oh man, with my memory, no. I know there were 3 times and I can't remember what they were. I think
one of them probably doors.
Doors.
One of them was left click. The bind on left click thing. He had this. He converted me into thinking, okay, it's probably good to take that away, but I'm not convinced that support gems that take up gem sockets and also have mana multipliers just to get back the functionality we had before is the way to go. But the way he talked about it at least showed me that he understood that that was a problem. And he's just got way more knowledge and way more experience than I do. So if he's still going that way and he knows we're unhappy and he really understands the problem, then I trust it. Whereas if I feel like you don't really understand what's going on, then I don't want to trust it, right? Like if I feel like you don't understand how big of an impact this is having, then I can get angry and be like, oh, you're not doing the right thing. But he really understands. You can't look at him and be like, oh, he doesn't understand what's going on. That would make you an idiot. He understands far more than I do. And in that interview, he made me feel like I know you understand this. Right? And so
I'm super surprised about the left mouse button thing, because like even in the interview, he did say like, yeah, this is not great. This is definitely like a really half-baked like solution. And the surprising thing to me is that they didn't say like, okay, we didn't quite think of all the ramifications of this change, and we're going to pull it back and we're going to iterate on it and then come back next league and it's going to be gone next league. Because they kind of have done that in the past with some other things. The thing that comes to mind is the what was the skill that got the reverted change? I'm trying to remember. It was the spell cascade.
Yeah,
Impending Doom.
the chaos
Impending
one.
Doom, yeah, exactly. And
That's
you know,
fun.
they kind of said like, okay, this change was like half baked, and they're gonna leave it as it is for now, and come back later and fix it because we like they didn't like do it
Yeah.
properly. And I'm surprised they didn't do something similar, even admitting that like, you know, this change like wasn't fully there. I'm surprised they didn't say like, okay, guys, we're gonna come back and like make some more changes and then bring it back next patch. So enjoy your left mouse button for one more league, but it's gone. Like that kind of a thing. I think maybe have been a better solution, especially if they're like planning on addressing some more of the problems that change brings later.
Bone shatter.
Yeah. It's not great. So not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, God, I can only imagine trying to balance the game and make big changes with how big the sandbox is and the different game. Like, how many builds are core or like meta or core or whatever that are just like, I always just think of like Vortex still. That's one of those ones that just kind of came out of nowhere that it almost feels like they made that change to kind of warm you up a little bit. Just kind of, you know, cook you a little dinner and say, hey, it's all good. And you're like, yeah, Vortex isn't instant. You're going to lose Cold Dot. You know, if you really love it, you can play like that crappy Wintertide brand. That's fine. And then, you know, 2 patches later, all right, we're just ripping off the Band-Aid. You got a little dinner there, but you don't get anything after this. Yeah, it's really, I bet you a lot of builds kind of operate on like scaling vectors that they've wanted to look at for a long time. Like, I was surprised the Tornado Shot finally got hit this league. It'll still be playable with a lot of money, but I was like, that's one of those things where it's been so strong for so long. Like, it was a few years ago when it got like a moderate nerf. And then eventually the power creep kind of caught back up to it. And then it was like, yeah, Tornado Shot's the meta again for you know, high end stuff. But they were willing to just like to actually hit it this league. And, like, the crazy thing is just the fact that they didn't hit Detonate Dead. that's just the crazy thing.
They tried. They tried 2 leagues ago, right? They tried to like cap the Auric Colossus HP, but clearly that wasn't enough. And yeah, it needs another. It's another slap on the wrist, I think.
Yeah, Detonate Dead has its serious reflection, and it just hit Volatile Dead instead.
So I'm just quick question: why is Detonate Dead such a big deal? I feel like it's a hardcore only thing. I feel like I never see it in softcore.
The thing that we don't talk about also on like this kind of thing when we're evaluating build power is like what time frame. Detonate Dead might only be relevant for like hardcore races and like league start pushes for like what the first maybe couple days. And in the grand scheme of thing, like the league lasts 3 months. Maybe it actually in that context isn't actually that OP, right?
Like, you would never catch me re-rolling into DD.
That's the thing,
that's
right?
Out of the question.
To me, that'd be like the only rationalization for GGG to not nerf it is they just think like, you know, this might be an exceptionally strong league starter on 0 gear, but then it gets outclassed by, you know, a lot of other stuff, I guess, with investment. And maybe that's okay. I think that's like the only thing that might, you know, in my mind makes it acceptable for them to not nerf it. But I don't know if that's justified. It
does scale like so as soon as you get into trigger vectors though, it then becomes relevant again. Like, you can do stuff with Cast on Crit or even Spell Slinger, right?
It's chain reaction that's the problem, right? The T-Gem.
Yeah,
like
that's the big one right now. That's nutty, yeah.
But very bizarre, yeah, for sure. That should have probably been nerfed again. That's a question mark. It's like it's weird when a skill gets so powerful that a community is like begging for nerfs. Like, it's not very many skills get to that point where everybody's like, please nerf it, like please. It's really, really strange.
Seismic,
all the hardcore players with RSI, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Seismic is the last time I remember like everybody yelling, "No, okay, we've had enough. This skill can go now."
Yeah,
was Seismic, Trav.
Yeah, maybe stating the obvious here, but like the problem with DD is it's super obvious. I don't need to tell you guys this. I'm talking to the audience. But the problem is, obviously, once you reach a point where you comfortably clear a white map, you don't need to invest much more into damage, because as you go up in tiers, the monster life increases, so the corpse life increases, and your damage scales off of the corpse life. So until you hit basically all the way to tier 17s now, you don't really have to make that much more investments into damage, and you can just focus on getting more coverage, more survivability, more quality of life, move speed, like all this stuff, sustain. And but in tier 17s, it does stop at more life modifiers, right? They said that corpse skills or corpse-based damage skills are not going to scale off of increased life in tier 17s. So at least that's something. So if you want to do the hard tier 17s, then maybe DD is not the best.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, again, in like a hardcore racing context, where you have to invest into defenses, DD will still probably be the best, I would assume, just for like early on, just because it's the easiest, freest damage where you just go 99% invested into defense. Like I've done all of the endless delves that we had, and I for the last one, I think all of them is Detonate Dead. Like that is the only build that
Really?
you play, and particularly paired up with Infernal Cry. And I really wanted to. It was like two of them ago. I think it was Huwu. He took Cold Dot Occultist down, and then I was like, all right, you know what? I'm gonna try Cold Dot Trickster, and I want to see how far I can go with that. I took Cold Dot Trickster to I think like 350 or 400, and you hit a wall. You just hit this hard wall, and you're like, well, you know what I can do? I can just switch to Detonate Dead, and then you go all the way down, and that's how you win. It's just free damage in any sort of hardcore racing context, and I think there's value in looking at that from a balance perspective as well. I think the question is just how much of a I think GGG has this like internal balance where they're like, okay, a skill can have 100 power, but if you press 2 buttons, it can have 250 power, right? It's like if you, based on the multiplier of buttons that you have, they will allow you to have more power or something like that for their balance. Like how annoying this build is to play, the more power that you get, and that's the way that it's set up. And in like a traditional game, like any traditional game, and this kind of segues into like PoE 2 stuff as well. Traditional game, you press multiple buttons to do things, doing your debuffs and whatever. And PoE, we're just like, nope, mana solved. All of our curses solved. All that stuff is just solved, and I am just walking forward. Ideally, I'm pressing 0 buttons. Whereas in like PoE 2, they're like forcing it. They're like, no, this skill literally does no damage if you don't combo it with something else. Which is they very much want you to press multiple buttons.
I'm gonna find a way to make 1-button builds in PoE too. I can promise you.
All right.
I'm going to make 1-button builds. I'm going to make them over and over and over again. You can't stop me. They can. Please don't.
Oh, they can. Oh, yeah. They'll cut you down.
They can and they will. But yeah, like I think that the DD thing is similar to what Mark said in regards to melee on the podcast with Ziz yesterday, that it's just like too much of a project to fix it properly. Like they could slap on a band-aid right now and like just nerf it, but it wouldn't solve the problem. It would just shift it and postpone it to later. And so I think they're just waiting to make like a big sweeping overhaul change. In the same way that, I mean, they did address Detonate Dead on the monsters this league, right? They did make that a little bit more visible and a little bit clearer to see whether it's dealing more or less damage. The monsters with the higher rarity having a little bit of a longer wind up and a clearer visual tell. So yeah, I'm hopeful, right? Like they can't tackle everything, and as we heard on the podcast, they have a really, really healthy perspective on what is good, what is bad currently in the game. So I just hope they have a nice and sound list for 325. We've already had some teasers there, what we can expect. But moving along, is there any important takeaways for Path of Exile 2? I mean, you guys, Subtractum, you've played it at Exile. Yeah, no, you both have been at ExileCon, all of you. I've only been to Gamescom. I only played a little bit. At ExileCon, there was no WASD yet, right?
Correct.
I played it last week as well.
Yeah, well, you were at LA, true. How do you like the WASD?
It's really comfy. It's nice, but it does, like, they did have to redesign the whole game for it. Like very clearly the monster encounters, like when I played at ExileCon, the monsters felt more like PoE 1 monsters. At last week, they went back to the drawing board, and every monster is like a scary Dark Souls-y type of encounter. Like you really can't fight more than a couple at a time. Like you will get swarmed from behind and you will die. As far as I know, there's no phasing in the game, at least in Act 1. And you gotta just really intentionally take all the fights. And I thought it was fun and cool. I did get a little claw hand thing going on. Though, like imagine trying to do WASD and pressing your flasks. And flasks are very important in that game. Like you will run out of mana, you will run out of life. So you're doing your WASD, you're trying to like try to press like 2 or 3 when you're trying to like walk forward at the same time. Like I was like using my pinky finger.
They didn't give you a
definitely-
gamer mouse with side buttons.
Yeah.
the
Well,
Flask.
we couldn't rebind buttons when at the demo. It feels really cool. I really enjoyed it. I am excited for PoE 2, but it's going to be very controversial with PoE 1 blasters. Like you have to just be expecting this is a new take on the game and the genre. Like it's just a different game.
This is something I haven't asked, but I'm sure Snap will agree with probably, and everyone else needs to like think about when you move into PoE 2 for the first time when that beta comes out at the end of this year, is that it doesn't actually matter how quick we are. I don't even think I have never actually cared how speedy I am. I only care how speedy I am compared to somebody else. If I can perform better than everyone around me, great. If I can't, then that's a me problem. It doesn't matter how quick the game is. I just need to be quicker than people around me.
Yeah, that sentiment holds true. I do have some like concerns about like the mobility and stuff in PoE 2 though. Like the things that I can point out just from watching the trailers, like people play and stuff, like the not phasing thing is like might feel really bad. Like getting body blocked is one of the like worst feelings in gaming, period. Like it's just not a good feeling for anybody. And like dying to that is just not a good look. And I that was a bigger problem in the previous beta, like the last year's ExileCon beta. You saw like, you know, everybody was like doing the demos and stuff, and they would just get surrounded by trash, and then they just stand there not able to move, and then like what, you can't like roll out or anything. It's bizarre, right? Like that's like the one like problem that I see like happening a lot, but I'm sure they're going to address that kind of thing. Like for me personally, in regards to the PoE 2 trailer, I feel like I'm intentionally like trying to watch less and less, because I feel like watching these trailers without like seeing the direction the game is going to take, especially like endgame, it makes me somewhat a little bit less excited about the game in a way. I feel like I want to see like a more complete picture of the game months down the line when it's, you know, more ready for that public beta, where I think I can clearly see like a full picture of the game, and I can really see like the kind of design decisions they're making rather than just guessing at like all of this stuff, I guess. Because like, yeah, sometimes
and judge it based
yeah.
based on an own playthrough, on an own character that you take from level 1 to wherever in the campaign, rather than like just seeing snippets of gameplay here and there, or getting to play like a 20-40 minute segment.
Yeah, because like I form a bad opinion when I see stuff like in the ExileCon initial beta, where like we don't get to choose our gear, we don't get to choose our passive tree, or like any of that stuff, and then like your character is just like under tuned / bad, or whatever the tuning is. Like I'm trying to like dissociate from all that kind of stuff and like wait until they have like a more complete product so I can try and like judge it effectively, I guess. Because like, yeah, I see that kind of stuff and it makes me form a negative opinion, which, you know, I don't have like a negative opinion. I'm sure it's just because like that stuff just isn't tuned, and it's just not a priority, especially for like the alphas and that kind of thing. And so when they tune all that stuff and they bring it to beta, I think I'll be a lot more excited to like try out and like look at the PoE to it from like a you know, a much more holistic perspective.
That's true. When I feel like in Path of Exile, I'm at a point where I'm being punished and a game is kind of hard and I need to really pay attention to not get stunned or get into a difficult situation, then it's usually because, you know, I didn't get my 4-link in the last act, or I made a bad decision here, I'm a little bit too underleveled and stuff like that. And this all factors in, and I can take it into account to how the game feels. But in Path of Exile 2, you're just like thrown in and there's no context for the gameplay experience that you have. You're like, is this how it's supposed to feel? Or is this like relatively good, relatively bad? You can't tell. You don't know how much you can change based on gearing and preparing better, and like how that will shape the experience.
I think they kind of painted themselves into a little bit of a Duke Nukem Forever situation. Where like, when was the first announcement for PoE 2? Like
Too long ago.
2019.
Very yeah, what, 5 years
First
ago now?
Exile Con.
5 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah,
long ago.
5 years ago, right? And they've very clearly made some very big decisions relatively recently. If you didn't see it, like the thing last week, like WASD required them to go back and reevaluate the entire way that like Monster AI works, you know, directly interacting with them. They're adding mounts now. Like they're just like, all right, well, here we're going to add mounts. Like they literally just slapped that in. Like they said we just added this last week or something. And they what else? Like they added active skills. Like you pick up a shield now and you can hold up a shield and it turns into a much more interactive. Like but there's a couple crazy YouTube comments that are like, I don't see the Dark Souls comparison. And I'm like, believe me, it feels like Dark
You
Souls.
don't?
Like, yeah, you pick up a shield, you hold it up, you block an attack, you walk backwards, you whiff punish them, you hit them. Like, it's a very direct, like many one-on-one encounters. And I mean, the boss fights are like, I love the boss fights are incredible. They're actually really enjoyable. But like they've clearly made these really big decisions in very recently, and I think they've just painted themselves in this thing where they were basically saying the game should be out. I mean, it's supposed to be out. Like in beta, it was supposed to be 3 months. That was the latest thing. And they were saying like a year ago, it was probably closer to a beta before then. And they keep adding more and more stuff. And I do think it's probably in the service of a better game. But like, how do they just say, oh, I almost think like the smart thing for them to do would be, hey, instead of us booking these like press events and everything and flying people across the world to play a demo that has a lot of tech issues, I'll tell you, you guys did not see, there were a lot of tech issues, a lot of tech issues.
I did hear.
When the game worked, it was fine, but like, tons of tech issues. It is so far away that like I would be strongly considering if I were them, if I were the game director, just be like, hey, you know, we're making big decisions. This isn't a service of a good game in the end, but it's got a lot more time in the oven. Like I think a beta by this Christmas already. Like my assumption right now is they don't know what the end game looks like. People keep saying like, oh, we've only seen a 3-link. We've never seen like what a 6-link power is. I don't think they know what 6-link power is, honestly. Like how many changes that they're making so recently, and we've never seen anything beyond a 2 or 3-link in Act 2. You know, and I think that's fine. I think they're still working out a lot of stuff, but I still think they're working out a lot of stuff, and I think the baby needs to go back in the oven. It's gonna be in there for a long time.
Without wanting to linger too much on the PoE 2 topic, because there's so many PoE 1 things to talk about.
Yeah.
But there was one thing I still wanted to drive home, and that is, what do you guys think about the... Wait, let me restart. In 2019, they said, we're not doing a different game. Path of Exile 2 will be 4.0. It will be a sequel to Path of Exile 1. And it will not be like a true sequel, but it will just continue into Path of Exile 2 and will eventually arrive there. And then they decided they want to divide that. And I'm all for that, because obviously the vision that they have for PoE 2 has strayed away quite a bit from what a lot of people seem to enjoy about Path of Exile 1. And I think it would be unfair if, you know, the existence of Path of Exile 2 means that Path of Exile 1 has to go and has to cease existing. So I think it's really cool that they did decide to split it, which allows each of the two games to double down on their respective identity. But what do we expect for Path of Exile 1 now? Because a lot of people feel like they really wanted that 4.0 that's been teased 2019, right? They really want a new act playthrough. They really want new graphics, new skills, a new gem system, and everything in PoE 1. But all of that is now kept for PoE 2. So, like, where do you see PoE 1 going leading up to PoE 2? That's what I'm curious.
I think everything changed after Kalandra. That was the catalyst. Right. I actually, is it conspiracy to say that Kalandra prompted the games to split? I don't know if this is a controversial thing.
I have also had that thought.
I wouldn't argue with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Like clearly, like when they pull back on the stuff that makes like the juicing, the speed, and everything that makes PoE 1, and they try to are trying to definitely have, as Subtractum said, like a very deliberate combat encounter. These two things are incompatible, right? And so they at this point, what do you do? Like, are you going to make half your audience mad and the other half like happy? No, like it makes sense for you to split the product. And I think that's literally what they did at that point. Right. So yeah, PoE 1 in the future, right? I think like they're just going to like keep doing the things that like people enjoy in PoE 1, right? Just the depth of content, the agency, the choice, and that kind of thing. And for a certain section of the population, there's certain people that don't like that. Like it's overwhelming. Right. It's just so much to learn, so much to handle, and like the speed, it's just a lot for a lot of people, right? Having a different game, a different product that has, you know, some of the really cool things about PoE, but it's in like a much more digestible, slower combat, you know, pacing format. Like that's a different product for other people to enjoy. And I think that's kind of like the thing that they're going for, right? And, you know, just doubling down on the, as you said, Kevin, so the identities, I think is like what they're going to be doing, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just more like curious as like what would you like to see for Path of Exile 1 now that all the things that were teased for Path of Exile 1 are exclusively Path of Exile 2 things?
I have a copium take. I think now that they are separated, we're going to be more and more willing to allow us blasting and speed and the sort of things that they were starting to shy away from, because we know those things are not the direction we're taking PoE. And having PoE 1 and PoE 2 be very, very similar games would be terrible, because we would just play the better one. If they were really, really similar, PoE 2 is going to be better. And we would just only sit there and we wouldn't have any reason to come back to PoE 1. But with the split and PoE 2 going in like a slower and more methodical and more like meaningful combat direction, it kind of just frees up PoE 1 to let us blast and clear whole screens and go quick and just be generally degenerate like we like. And so my slight copium take is that they're just going to let us keep blasting. They're going to keep facilitating this fast clear the whole screen thing in PoE 1 and just let that happen.
Because if affliction is any indication, right? Like that's the affliction's the craziest thing they've ever added to the game. Honestly, like no other mechanic is as polarizing as that. And if that's the direction we're going, that's just crazy.
I'm cool with it.
I'm cool with this too, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Wait, in what sense was affliction polarizing?
Well, just like it makes every other mechanic like it's the thing that dominates your gameplay, right? It's you're min-maxing for affliction and everything else is secondary, right? Like it's all consuming. It's so much more powerful than everything else in the game. It's just like the only thing you care about for like endgame mappers. It feels like, not that it's polarizing that people don't like, or that half people.
Yeah, that's what I got from it. I was like,
not like
I didn't see like a lot of negative sentiment about affliction. It seems to be like one of the most well received.
No, not like that. In regards to other mechanics, it's like, you know, it's like the black hole. Affliction consumes all, and it was just so powerful. The power creep on that mechanic is just wild, right? And yeah, if we're gonna see more stuff like that over and over, then yeah, that's just maybe the direction they're taking PoE 1, and they leave the methodical gameplay to PoE 2. That's the thought.
I hope so, because I will very much enjoy both. Like I will enjoy both kinds of games for different reasons. But if you make them super similar, then right? Like I'm just going to play whichever one I feel is better and not be driven to play the other one because it's almost the same, right? If you put them both in the same direction, then why would I do both? The other thing is, I think I've been making content for like 6 years, but I've been playing this game for 10 years, and I don't think I've skipped a league except Calandra. That's how bad Calandra was. In 10 years, I've never skipped a league. I played Calandra for 2 days, and then Diablo 3 came out, and I played that for 5 days, which is longer than I played.
Which is the maximum that it can be played, yeah.
Yeah, which is that's the maximum duration of Diablo 3. And then I came back for another 2 days. And then I went and found a new ARPG that I had never played before and played it for the next 3 months. I just didn't come back. So like that's the first time I've ever not played PoE for the whole league, basically. So like I never want to go in that direction again.
Yeah, I don't think it will. I mean, I the more I think about it, the more Snaps theory I think I really like. Where just Calandra was very clearly, they're like, we're moving towards, we're trying to converge, right? The games are going to merge. We got to start bringing it back, kind of figure out the middle of the gameplay between these two games. And everyone everyone disliked that, right? Everyone disliked that, and they had to be like, oh shit, we're not going to be able to afford making PoE 2 if if it stays like this. And I think they made the right decision. And yeah, I think it's in a really good place. And I really like that affliction. It was all consuming. Like it totally, like, build making itself kind of turned into this weird thing where it was like, it's not a Magic Find build, guys, but you can play it. It's really fun. And they're like, well, I put in my 2 Venters and my Gold Worms and it didn't work. And I was like, well,
Yep.
sorry, you know, I was trying to make a different build, and sorry, there's no magic find in it. You know, it was super all consuming, but it was really cool that you could do that. And then even people are just like, what was it like? Locus of Corruption itemized temples were like 7-8 divines each. And so I was just like, people would be like, I've never made money. Like even this league, people are like, I've never made money before. I'm like, all right, I'm going to make an incursion video. I'm going to show you how to make like 15, 20 divines an hour. Go have fun. Like there's no reason why you can't make a couple temples an hour.
I made a video doing scoured maps in tier 16s that was over self-sustaining, making like 12 div an hour.
Yeah.
Just jump to the Mesa boss, kill it, leave, jump to the Mesa boss, kill it, leave, and it was like 12 div an hour.
Yeah. And like
It's crazy.
more people having more access to more things is just going to lead to more fun. There definitely needs to be chase somewhere. Like I probably Affliction was a bit much.
Somewhere
like
between Toda and Affliction, right? Like somewhere in the middle there.
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't be able to farm Mage Blood in 3 to 5 hours as like a casual player. That's a bit much.
I know someone who dropped like 14 mirrors solo.
I got
dropped on
3
the ground, not earned.
I
Dropped
got
on the
3
ground.
headhunters in one map, and it was like moderate. It was like 3,000 wisps with like okay magic find. It's like one of them was duped, right? But like still,
Yeah.
that's so silly. That's just silly, right? But somewhere in the middle, right? And I think just people having access to things, and so many people were able to try more builds and experience the high end. And I think that actually just helps people latch onto the game and like remember those good times. And you know, we got to adjust a little bit, but I think staying on that side of things is just healthy overall.
Like everyone I've ever talked to is in agreement that maybe it was a little bit too far this league though. Like maybe the rewards were just like a bit, just a teeny bit over the top. But still, I'd rather this side of the line than where Calandra was. Right, like that was all the way down here. I'm happier to be too much than not enough. But we could definitely tone that back a little.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this. Might be controversial, but I'm a big fan of like the really crazy, wacky league mechanics, and then it's just like wild, and then they take it away, and it can be like next league is some other crazy bullshit, right? That they add.
Yeah,
like,
I'm okay with that
so,
too.
That's just me. Some people dislike that; they want to like be able to engage with the next league. I understand that totally, but for me, like just having the league mechanic be overtuned is like kind of fun, I think.
Yeah, League should be really strong while it's going on, and like I'd rather not be guaranteed that it goes core if that means that every league feels like really intense,
Yeah,
and is
really good.
Yeah, rewarding and really strong in its own characteristic. I don't know. I wouldn't want to buy like a 20% affliction for having it go core. I don't know. I wouldn't want to give up a large amount of power during the league just so that it can go core without further adjustments.
Things haven't really been going core. Like besides Sanctum, what's gone core recently?
Well, the Black Morrigan is going core next league.
Okay, I mean, like little bits and
completely
pieces,
yeah.
right? But the actual mechanic, there was Sanctum, and what was before that was Crucible, and that's not core, right? Like
Toda, and then Affliction. So yeah, they're all gone, all of them.
Yeah.
So I think they're going with that philosophy, which is I think healthy.
As long as they can do a good job, like reusing the work that they put into the assets and stuff, and have like some of the stuff come back, like the Black Morrigan now, or the tattoos from Toda coming back now in a slightly adjusted way. But that's really cool. One last one. Mark teased the possibility of backporting WASD into PoE 1. Is that something that you would like to see? If PoE 2 comes out and you really like WASD, is WASD that something that you'd want in PoE 1 as well?
I think it would be very interesting how they would backport it. That's the question. So I kind of like just being able to hold down, like most of my time playing, right, is I just hold down left click and I use Q for my primary skill. And I'll just, you know, if you're using a bow skill or something, I'm holding down left click and I'm just tapping Q. And that's my gameplay. It's really nice. Like for me personally, I think there's in PoE 1, it's unlikely outside of maybe boss fights that I would ever touch WASD. But in boss fights, like just imagine dodging the balls and Searing Exarch. I think for most people that actually might be mechanically a lot more comfortable than trying to click and like maybe press a button. Like I've wanted for a long time there to be like a stop move key. like I'll usually use my primary skill if it's fast. I'll like click somewhere and then I'll tap my attack to stop my character from moving. Like I think for a lot of people that actually might feel a lot more comfortable and natural. So I think it's probably be good for the game, for accessibility, for a lot more people to want to play. I think for, I don't know, if you're playing for like 12 plus hours a day, and I think an optimized mouse and keyboard, like regular mouse and keyboard, click to move would probably be just better on your wrist as well. Too much WASD, I think might get a lot. I felt like, at least in PoE 2, you know, I didn't have optimized keys, but I felt a little claw action afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on your hardware, keyboard, and all that, right? And on your setup and your general whist health. Like for me personally, it's like the WASD thing has two components, right? You have like the ability to control your character with WASD, similar to how you do it with a controller. Instead of pointing and clicking somewhere, you can actually directly say this direction, and the moment you release the button, the character stops moving. And then, of course, there's the aspect that presumably will remain exclusive to Path of Exile 2, which is being able to fire while moving.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
like
yeah.
Ranged attacks while moving, or even like melee attacks and spells, as they hinted at. And I previously had the stance of I really don't want WASD in Path of Exile 1, because the way that it works in Path of Exile 2 is the moment they brought WASD in, everything needs to be balanced around WASD, and I don't see a future in which like non-WASD gameplay will be viable in Path of Exile 2. There was just, yeah, you can technically play it with mouse and keyboard the way that you played Path of Exile 1, but you'd be just at a massive disadvantage because certain things are technically impossible. And like you pointed out, the granular control of your character in like situations where precise positioning is important would just be way harder to do with mouse. But what you just said, like if you like completely exclude the moving part, the firing while moving, attacking while moving, and PoE 1 still works the way that it works currently, but with the only difference that I have WASD, yeah, maybe that would be actually something good for the game, because not everyone is like a mechanical god with like, you know, knowing, oh, I want my cursor there, and then like just move it in one movement. Like so often when I try to like do efficient vendoring or something like that, I overshoot like just by 2 or 3 centimeters with the mouse. I'm just not a mechanical god in that sense, that I can look at a pixel on the screen and point my mouse cursor there immediately. So maybe it would be better to have the WASD. Maybe you softened my take there a little bit, because I was gonna say no WASD in Path of Exile 1. Don't ruin my Path of Exile 1.
Yeah, I mean, I as I've gotten older, I used to be I was a pretty hardcore gamer when I was younger. I was pretty elitist about certain things, but like, yeah, these days I really think, you know, as long as it's not ruining the game or making it worse, just making it more accessible for people in general is just healthy. And like the worst thing, as someone who's there was a game I got into recently, the worst thing would be the game dying and limiting the access to people. And this game's already so obtuse and opaque that anything that allows people, like I'm using Last Epoch right now just to get my friends as a springboard. Like I've tried to get them to play PoE for a while. I'm like, well, how about Last Epoch now? You know, it's still a cool ARPG, and you can play this for a little bit. And
A lot easier on a new player too. A lot easier.
Yeah, you got an in-game game guide. You can learn all about penetration. You know, I know you don't want to be surprised by penetration. You want to be warmed up for it and be ready for it, right? And you know, PoE 2 won't teach you about
realer
it.
words have never been spoken.
And so yeah, if you want like a deep knowledge of penetration, you can start with Last Epoch, and then you get used to it, and then you can move over to more advanced penetration. I mean, you could even, you know, do double penetration in PoE 1 if you want, like, you know, you're doing like a Trinity setup or something. It could be pretty cool, right? And yeah, so I think that's a really cool way to like introduce people to a game, is adding accessibility things like WASD and stuff like that. So I'm just really pro anything that gets more people playing these days.
Yeah, that's a fair take. Lower the barrier of entry.
Exactly.
I have a slightly different reason for wanting it, and that is, this league is going to help a lot with this. But in the past several years, obviously, I'm wearing these gloves. These are compression gloves. My hands hurt. My hands were already damaged before I started playing from work. My fingers are screwed. It's not like the game caused it, but PoE causes more of a problem to my hands than any other game I've ever played in my life, except maybe StarCraft 2. Chad, the only game I've played that has like more clicks involved. And so every other ARPG I ever play, I now play with a controller. And it is very, very, very smooth to play Undecember, Torchlight, Last Epoch, Diablo 4, all of these other games with a controller, and then just put the controller down and use my mouse to do inventory management and all that other sort of
that
things.
PoE
My
one doesn't
UI
hybrid.
doesn't
Yeah,
change.
you're
like,
right. You're so
nothing-
right.
And I can set the hotkeys for my keyboard and mouse and for the controller separately, so I can have them do whatever I want with both of those things. And I just cannot do that in PoE. And I think if you go towards a WASD style movement, you become a lot easier to work in controller support. And that would make me really happy, because if I could play PoE with a controller, you can't now. You really can't. They have support for it, but it's not reasonable. You have to reboot the whole client. The UI for it sucks. It changes the way the whole game looks. And then you can't do specking or crafting or inventory management or anything like that. So I'm never using this in PoE. But if
There's
they
some big
fixed that,
advantages.
I would.
There's some big advantages to controller. I'm sure you know about this. The AoE looting is extremely OP. It is, in fact, it's so OP. One of our party members in our 6-man that we run uses a controller, and we give him a very special filter that has only certain things that show up. And he can basically just walk around and vacuum it all up at light speed, because
he's like the guy that's picking up all the divine orbs off the floor, but doesn't even see chaos orbs, because that's somebody else's problem.
No, like we give him just like all the currency, the single stack currencies that like, maybe we won't pick up, but because he's on a controller, he can vacuum it up like he's a literal Roomba, and just like picking it all up at the speed of light. And that's a huge advantage that controllers have that you don't have on mouse and keyboard. I mean, I think that is the primary reason, is that there's those kind of features, that exist on controller that give you an advantage, but don't exist on a mouse and keyboard. And they don't want people hot swapping just because there's those advantages, right? So you have to relog, and that's the reason there isn't that hybrid system. The other thing that comes to mind is gem leveling on console, or sorry, on controller, is automatic. You can like have it automatically level up your gems. You don't have to like click the thing at the top right. It just levels them up automatically. You can like turn it on and off. So yeah. Otherwise, I think there would be no problem with being able to like switch input methods freely.
See, to me, that sounds like the same reason they got rid of left click, except in reverse. Like, we're obviously getting rid of the bind on left click is to like homogenize a bit between controller and keyboard and mouse, at least obvious to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but that feels like a pretty big part of it. You could go the other way. Hey, controller's got these two things. How about you give me some like a pickup bind, so that like I might use space so that I could run around and loot with the spacebar, right?
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then it becomes the same thing.
Yeah, if they gave you a small area of effect right around your character, and you could hit a loot key and just AoE loot that, because that's what it is
like
on
you're
controller.
still going to be like in the range, right? Run over to it. It's not like, that would be cool. Then they could add that, and then you would homogenize between the two sets of controllers, and then you've got the option of letting me hot swap again.
Yeah. Let me get those quality of life things on my mouse. Come on, man.
Yeah.
There's no reason to make me click 300 to but yeah, chat's impressed by how good I am at double tapping Z and resetting and clicking. Like, no, I've just done it so many thousands of times. I'm just used to it. Click in the middle and just double tap Z and pick everything up. That's like, oh god, I don't know. I feel like that's a problem.
Why do I have to plug in why do I have to plug in a controller for this feature?
Yeah.
Like I'm serious. There's an in-game advantage to us plugging in a controller and playing on a worse input scheme, because there's like some quality of life thing baked into it that doesn't exist on mouse and keyboard. It's like really backwards. Really
I can only imagine like the scarabs this league.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Luckily enough, you're in a 6-man party, so if one of you do it, it's fine. But
yeah.
You mean all the scarabs dropping, or micromanaging them into the map device?
Oh my god. No, it's the dropping.
There's another use case for that thing that I mentioned, and people talk about blighted maps. And you can like do the blighted map, right? And you log out and switch to your controller, and then you AoE loot the whole blighted map at the very end, right? Because there's a ton of bubble gum and stuff that comes out at the end. So you plug in your controller, you run around vacuum looting it with your OP controller tech, and then you switch back to your mouse and keyboard to go do the next play. It's like, that's seriously a thing people do.
And you even switch to a second character that has a caster mastery to open all the blighted quests.
Exactly,
Yeah.
So it's just
Clever use of game mechanics.
Make it so your controller build is a caster.
Yeah,
so that you can
exactly. That's so
open
silly.
everything.
Right, yeah, perfect that you offered that segue into the scarabs.
Oh, yeah, excellent.
Perfect.
5-head, actual co-host here. So, what do we think about these upcoming scarabs? There's so many of them. Do we have an exact number? I need to look at the patch notes.
106?
106 different types.
Was it? I think it was 106.
That's insane. I need to see the scarab. They did show the scarab tab at some point,
109.
right? The fragment tab, the scarab page
My
of the
bad.
fragment tab. 109.
109.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
My
I can link it to you if you want to go to the put it in the chat, the direct link to the all the scarabs
Okay, sure.
if you wanted to look at that. I mean, it's whatever. I don't think we're gonna mouse over every single one right now.
yeah, I think the one thing I can mention in general about the scarabs, I talked with Grimro a little bit about this, and I think he agreed. It was like basically a lot of the changes to a lot of the scarab categories made it so there's a lot more vertically integrated farming instead of horizontally integrated farming. What I mean by that is you're much more incentivized to, within a particular mechanic, invest as many scarabs as possible, right? For a lot of them. Obviously, there's some exceptions and some combos that you can pull off, but for example, if you're doing breach, right, you're no longer able to invest in like 3 or 4 mechanics on your atlas and like juice them all up at the same time. So you have like, before you'd have a set of 3 or 4 things that you're investing in. But now if you're like doing breach, you're really incentivized to put breach scarab, breach scarab, breach scarab, breach scarab, because they're all multiplying together. And so you're a little bit constrained in the fact that you are only able to invest in maybe 1, maybe 2 mechanics at most. But those mechanics are like super juiced, right? If you actually have all the multipliers going for it. But now you're not going to have as much diversity in the stuff you're doing at once, if that makes sense. That's like the main thing I can point out from just all the scarabs, right?
That's a really good point. It's almost like they had to make the triple atlas trees because of if you wanted to change, like because you want to do this vertical farming, if you ever want to change, it would be extra painful this league because you're going to be so invested into like one thing at a time, and that would feel really bad.
Or the other way around. Maybe they really knew that we want additional atlas pages and they were happily going to accommodate that. But then when they were also reworking the scarab systems, like we have
played
to design
Calandra,
them.
man.
Well, but like, think about it. If they hadn't changed anything, then with 3 atlas trees, you could have covered basically everything on the atlas tree that you ever want, right? You could have 3 trees that each cover 3 mechanics, and then you got 9 mechanics, and that's enough, generally speaking, to get all the needs covered. Yeah, maybe you'd have to change 1 or 2, but obviously with the 3 atlas trees, you could have covered a lot of ground before, and you can still, but you can't supplement it with the scarabs as much. Are there any situations where you want to like actually use 4 of these 2 additional breaches?
Probably not.
Always.
You want the like higher tier ones that offer special effects for the like, to turn them into interesting breaches, like, and give them more density, whatever, more splinters, that kind of thing. At first glance, I don't see any like huge use cases for adding like 4 of the basic scarab into like any of the mechanics, honestly. Because like, yeah, the higher tier scarabs are giving you like huge effects that multiply them on the like higher tiers. So I just don't know that there's like huge use cases for the bottom ones is all.
Unless they're like 20 times as common and you literally
there might be though.
have too many.
That's my guess. Yeah.
There might be though. Solo play, not Giga Juice, right? Like just your like casual enjoyer may find themselves with like 50, 60, 80, 100 of these and only like 4 of the really good ones. And if you're just like casually running maps and you're spec'd into breach anyway and they cost nothing, why not?
Yeah, they did say that the scarabs are going to be plentiful. And I think Mark's words were on the podcast. He said, I think you guys are going to be quite surprised how plentiful we've been. Like, I think something like that. And so I think we are going to be able to just chuck, scarabs on your map. If putting scarabs on your map isn't something you typically do, this league, you might be able to just, you might find yourself just being able to chuck random stuff onto your atlas. Right?
At least the like lower tier ones, I don't really know what we're calling them, but like the more common ones, especially casual people who don't normally use them, I think we're going to have to adjust to using them plentifully, like using a lot of them and often. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, though there is the weird, I think you're right. I think the case you're going to find is people are just going to have hundreds probably of these, the rusted ones, right? And they're not rusted anymore, but they're just gonna, you can just put them in. What I would like is not have to even refresh the stack. You can just say, hey, make this my rusted breach scarab, this slot, and then it just pulls it from your stash. Because even refreshing every 20 is going to be whatever. But it's kind of the weird thing where if you're not invested into breaches, is it worth? I mean, this is a calculation that probably, if they're super casual, they're probably not doing anyway. But is it worth running 8 additional breaches in your map if you have no other investment into breach?
No.
Probably not. You're just slowing yourself down, and actually boss rushing would probably be better anyway for, whatever profit or whatever you're getting. Granted, if you're just enjoying, that's fine. But yeah, I think no matter what, as Snap said, those multipliers on the big ones are so much better that I don't want 8 Esh breaches on my map when I can guarantee 4 Chayula breaches that are dropping 50% more splinters. That's just like a night and day calculation, right?
Here's something a little interesting though. With only having Chayula breach as a guaranteed option, there I can see a world where at certain points in the league, Chayula breaches aren't worth running over having random ones with a greater chance for Ulnatol on your tree.
I've heard that before, like that the Chiula one specifically might not be worth the slot, and you'd rather actually just have the random breaches, but all the other scarabs are like really, really good.
You're still not going to be putting 8 in if you're doing that and you're spec'd in. You're still not going to put 8 extras in. You're still going to want the other ones, but not the Chalupa one. Sometimes. That's going to be up to the. That's going to fluctuate no matter what, because
that's up to how popular your poison SRS build is,
right? Yeah, and to begin with, everyone running the new poison SRS, which is like twice as strong as it used to be. They're all going to want the upgraded swords, so there'll be money in Chalupa at the beginning.
I'm so jealous.
Of the buff, or
yeah, I did SRS Guardian on hit, which was incredible. This league with Spectres, yeah, it's deleted. They just like, 38% less damage, get wrecked. And then I see Baylor Mage over here, which is like, we don't need wither, we don't need a source of wither anywhere. Oh man, this is so cool. We actually get more damage. What the hell? And I'm like, oh, my max roll guide archived, just deleted. All right, cool, nice.
I also thought I was nerfed at the time. Like I read it and I was sad about it.
It looked bad initially, yeah.
And I was like, maybe I can save it. We'll see when Path of Building gets updated. I don't know
if
it'll be worth playing. And then I got into the
last episode you were telling me,
like, huh?
And that leech is gonna feel so good too. That's gonna feel incredible.
Yeah, it's I haven't included the leech tech in the guide this time because I haven't tested it yet. But I put big notes at the front of the written guide, and then also explained in the video the like experimental testing I'm going through, and I'm like 80% sure that it's going to work, and the guide's going to change into that. But I just want to test it before I write it out as a guide for the masses. I want to play with it first. That's all.
Going back to scarabs, do you guys have any like ones that you're eyeing? Like, what are the scarabs that you're going to try and build around on your like starter strategies, that kind of thing? Like, what are the things that you guys are eyeing? I can talk about my strategies, but I don't know how relevant that is to a lot of people.
No, I always love hearing about what you guys are doing.
I'll be real fast. I'm going to be doing a group self-found league like Ballard did last week. We're doing like a little, 20, 30, 40 people community thing. And I'm definitely looking forward to, and I think this one might be super rare, but the essence one that makes every rare monster in the map an essence. That sounds like you could get like some handsome crafting materials out of single maps, but it all depends on how common that one is. But I don't see it being very common. It's more like a special treat that you get to do a couple of times per league, probably. I mean, outside of trade, obviously. Trade, you can do it every map if you can afford it.
What about you, Ballard?
So up until like a day and a half ago, I thought I was just going to be playing a Lightning Arrow Deadeye. And then we figured out how much better SRS is, and I was like, well, I have to play this. Like I think I'm contractually obliged. So now I don't know what my Atlas tree is going to be, because I was just going to do Breach with like a side of altars, because Breach auto hand opening and then all the cool stuff was like, I was like, yeah, Deadeye's great for that. They'll go nuts. But now that I'm playing SRS, I have to like rethink what I'm doing, and I'm not entirely sure. So yeah, I haven't decided yet. I'm still working on trees and trying to figure out what I'm going to do.
Well, it's obviously very beneficial to be on SRS Poison because it's such a great all-rounder that you can basically pick anything that you want.
Except Legion. If anybody is starting with SRS, please don't touch Legions. In fact, walk past them when you see them. They're actually literally the worst. Something about SRS's AI gets confused when they're in stasis. Yeah. They run towards mobs that they've picked, and then sometimes before they even get there, they change targets to something on the other side of the screen, and they just spend 80% of their time changing targets and running around and not breaking anything open. It's the only mechanic SRS awful. Can't do. Just don't touch Legions. Pick any other mechanic. It can do everything. Everything, bosses, essences, harvest, expedition. It doesn't matter. It can do all the things. Not Legion. Don't do Legion.
The new Legion scarabs are crazy though, man. Those things are going to be crazy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that multiple stasis one. Oh my god. I want to see the clips of like how many rewards you guys get.
I don't think we're going to be running Legion.
You're not going to do Legion?
But I think that's like more a solo, a headhunter strat type thing. But you're definitely going to see some headhunter boys running around breaking out the Legions 100 times with however many billions of DPS. And that's going to be interesting to see.
Here's something cool. When I was watching the Teasers podcast or interview or whatever it is, Octavian was in chat, who was a large part of building all these scarabs. He answered a few extra questions that I had, and one of them was, how's that breaking out multiple times going to work? And he was like, well, it'll just be a little bit less likely every time it adds for it to like add another one again. So it'll be pretty easy to break it out 2 or 3 times and get 2 or 3 rewards, but it'll be less likely every single time. And then I went, but not down to 0? And he said, not down to 0. And I said, there'll be clips around where somebody's got 20 reward tiles in a single mob, and he's like, well, it's not likely to happen, but it'll definitely happen. So we're going to see some clips where somebody playing like a bow or giga clear speed headhunter build is just sitting there blowing up an entire pack over and over again during the stasis field, and you'll just see the rewards will just be like again.
Mini 5-ways, but in the map this time. I think it's really cool.
I mean, like Mark said, like at a certain point in testing, Octavian had like this really huge chain of rewards that went off screen. And I was in Tuna's chat the other day, and Octavian was there, and someone specifically addressed him. Was like, "Hey, how long was it?" And Octavian said, "I didn't break out the ruler, but definitely far off screen. Like you could, 2 or 3 screens wide off screen, basically." He said something along those lines. Nice. But that was obviously prior to them adding the diminishing returns, like lowering the chance. Still crazy. Subtractum, you have any scarabs that you're excited for trying?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just especially since I start Ignite. I'm going to be starting Ignite this league. It's just really good for Expedition. Any damage over time build is usually good for that, and just guaranteed Danig. Of course, we don't know how common these things are, but guaranteed Danig, the double number of runic monster markers, and like giga remnants and everything. I don't know. I think if these are not super rare, this is just going to be a really good way to like, I don't know, like even expeditions and maps I think are going to feel pretty incredible. Not even counting logbooks or anything. So I'm looking at that. And then like the fun stuff is any combination of like the Beyond monsters and like all those Beyond portals, doing like Ruckus with Anarchy with the Rogue Exiles and all that, and just crazy shit, or like packs of monsters.
The one where the unique monsters drop 8 to 12 Beyond portals.
Yeah, exactly. So you combine that with Ruckus, where you're getting 30 Rogue Exiles in a map, and just like what the hell's gonna happen, right? I think there's gonna be some really fun stuff there. But for early game farming, assuming Necropolis very much does not look like an Affliction League. Where Tujin was really sad and lonely this league. He was a pointless little guy. I think Expedition is just so solid to start with, and then looking at essences as well. Of course, I just like to kind of like pseudo SSF craft my own gear as well for the first week. It's just kind of fun to do.
Absolutely. Dude, I actually saw this. I was reacting to the Zizaran interview. I listened to it yesterday while doing a practice run, but then I wanted to react to it on stream again because I missed some things and spaced out here and there. And I saw this like 1 hour before the podcast, and I felt so called out because the flavor text literally says, "The fated hour is almost nigh." And I was like, wow.
No, that's tomorrow, not today.
Right?
Well, I mean, earlier today, 1 hour before the podcast. So that's when I noticed the flavor text. That's what I mean. Because yesterday I was just listening in; they weren't reading out the flavor text, so I was just doing my run. I didn't notice, but today on the rewatch, I saw that and I was like, "Wow, that is awkwardly fitting."
Yeah, the
Sometimes
one thing
it makes you paranoid. Yep.
One thing I can talk about in regards to the scarabs that I think will actually affect a lot of people is there's a lot of ramifications for like hyper endgame juicers from these scarabs, obviously, because it's like the main way you juice your stuff, right? The one thing I can point out is reliquary scarabs ate a gigantic nerf, essentially.
Yeah.
And that is going to have huge impacts on the unique economy for all players because basically uniques are flooded into the market because of the old reliquary scarab. And before you were using a winged scarab, which had 250% more unique items. Now you have nameless seer, which is, kind of worthless for juicing. And then you have the unique monsters drop a unique, which is really trash. And then you have 100% more unique items. And going from 250% more to the 100% is a huge nerf to the amount of uniques you're going to be generating in like 6-mans and also just in general solo MFers. And so I think that there's going to be a lot more expensive uniques just due to this change alone. And you're going to see a lot more expensive stuff. Now, they did make the T0s more common from what they said. So maybe
yeah, exactly. They baked 150% more into the tier zeros.
But those are the T0s, right? And not like the other items, the T1s, the T2s that people are picking up, that kind of thing. So that's just one thing to be aware of, is that there's like all of those items that were being injected into the economy via like the MFers is going to be a lot less because a lot of people are going to be opting for like a double divination or triple divination strategy and dropping reliquary entirely. And so there's going to be a lot less uniques that are being injected into the softcore economy. That's just one thing to know. It's
also a double-edged sword. It will mean quite a lot of the tier 1, tier 2, and maybe even tier 3 uniques will be more expensive if you need them for your build. But it also means if you find one on the floor, it's probably going to be worth more when previously you might have hidden it or just thrown it in your stash because it wasn't worth it. It's just going to be different, right?
Goes both ways. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But the div card ones are for endgame is going to be like the true game changers. There's some crazy multiplication going on with the div scarabs, and it's just, if you notice that it's 150% increased divination cards found in area from the regular div scarab, whereas before this used to be more divination cards. Now that increased divination cards on the regular div scarab is multiplicative with the more div cards found on the other scarab, the gilded looking one. So you have 150% increased divination cards multiplied by potentially 120% more divination cards, which is actually more divination cards than an old winged scarab would give you. And then on top of that, the third scarab will make it so you have a chance to complete a full stack, 20% flat. And that is just the div card output from all of these scarabs together is just through the roof. It is just crazy. So basically, MFing has turned now into div card simulator instead of unique simulator, which I think is kind of interesting. So yeah,
this is where all the mage bloods are coming from now.
I think so. Yeah. Just some really funny implications where Fortunate, right, the 12 stack for two divs is actually a better card than Apothecary. It generates you more money than Apothecary does, the Fortunate. Because it has such a high stack size and it's worth 2 divs.
It's
and
so
it just
common too.
It has a chance. It's so common. It has a chance to fill up to a full stack. So you're actually getting more output out of Fortunate than you are.
That's a wild calculation. Yeah.
I hadn't considered the fact that it's a large stack.
Yeah.
Makes the 20% chance for it to be a full stack significantly more value than a stack of 5, like as an increase.
There's a lot of cards like that, like the 19 cards for 19 mirror shards, unrequited love. That card becomes extremely good. There's a lot of cards that are extremely good when you factor into account that it's completing the full stack. So the meta is going to be really different than what was there before. So the end game, like MFing, is like super different. It's super interesting.
Yeah, and specifically like being able to farm any map you want for the divination cards that you want to farm. That's great.
Well,
it's a breath of fresh air. I'll be honest. Like it is now. I'm so happy about this change, and honestly, I think it's one of the most clever like things GGG has done in regards to like end game mapping farming. Because like Mark talked about it a little bit on the podcast, right? Where he's like, having anybody do the calculation where this map is the best, like, isn't necessarily going to be a thing anymore. With the addition of this curation scarab and then also Twist of Fate. You can run just any layout you want, get the quantity bonus from Twist of Fate, and then use the div scarab of curation. You can run anything you want. And I think that's really cool. And like the variety we're going to get from that, I think is going to be really refreshing in endgame. That's like a really, really cool change, I think. So, if you want to run the same map, you can. But also, like, if you just want to run random stuff, like, that's cool too. And there's a benefit to doing so.
Here's a question. What's your feeling on like the Giga Juiced MF party running tier 17s?
Mark did mention that the mobs themselves have a quantity bonus that are applied to them, and the maps themselves are much larger, and the base mob count is a lot higher. So it is something we're going to be doing, is exploring T17 MFing, of course. But there's a couple issues in that you can't put delirium orbs on them. That's one thing. You can't use Twist of Fate to add additional quantity or modifiers to the map. That's another thing that it doesn't have going for it. And then obviously, if you get bad mods, the map just might be unrunnable. So it might be hard to obtain really good ones that you can run. But it's definitely something we're going to explore. It has potential. It just really depends on what that quantity number is.
If it makes up for the losses.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right. Yeah, I guess, like you said, we're not going to hover over all of them. Is there any specific one that you'd like to still point out? I don't think I have seen all of these. I've definitely gone over all the ones yesterday in the teaser.
I'm actually curious. Snap, are you guys planning on using the glittering? I'm actually just curious if that can factor in. Because
which one's glittering? Sorry, is that
that's the recently killed for quantum rarity?
So the meta for MFing is going to be triple div because it's multiplier on top of multiplier on top of multiplier. And then you have one slot left, which is a juicer scarab. And the best thing by far is the bloodline scarab. I think that scarab in particular is going to be the most expensive scarab out of every single one in the entire pool, hands down.
Everything being magic.
It will be the most expensive scarab by a mile. I wouldn't be surprised if that scarab in particular goes to like 3, 4, 5 divs, like that one in particular. So definitely be on the lookout for that one.
Okay. Inside information, everybody.
Yeah.
As close as we can get. Well, I mean, inside the group, right? True. I think we haven't all mentioned our starters explicitly yet. Balor has said, you said you're doing Poisonous. Subtractum said something Ignite, not DD Ignite, right?
God, no.
Well, I mean, it's not the worst. I feel like I have to do it in the solo self-found environment, right? Like,
Are you doing it? No, you don't. If you're not in hardcore,
not.
No. If you're in regular SSF, you do not have to play.
I do want to kind of prep for hardcore. I do want to die less because my game enjoys a lot more if I care about dying. I enjoy the game a lot more if I care about dying. And the past year or so, I've been slowly losing interest, and I hope that with return, stepping a little bit towards HCSSF, which is where I spent most of my time in the history of Path of Exile. But I just really didn't feel comfortable doing HC with a lot of things. But yeah, getting a little bit more into that direction, I hope will reinvigorate me and will provide more long-term motivation, because my progression and my possessions are going to feel more significant, right? When there's no trait that I could use to bypass. But yeah. Honestly, I just was like, oh, I really want to do Elementalist Ignite, because Elementalist is a really comfy class to level through the acts with. It's really impactful from the normal lab on. And then I was like, well, maybe Wave of Conviction Ignite. And someone else told me Wave of Conviction is not the best. I was like, yeah, you're right. It has a little bit of a traveling wave and a little bit of a delay. What do you recommend? And they were like, yeah, do the EK. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do the EK. And then like at some point after that, it dawned on me. I was like, why not just do the DD? Like, why not just go for the obvious powerful choice? And I can still do like my beautiful snowflake meme build on the second character once I set myself up for success.
Yeah, I mean, Detonate does. If you're in Soul Stuff on hardcore, I think, particularly if you're kind of jumping back into it, it is so effective and so strong. I think that is the natural choice. And if you're an SSF hardcore, no matter what build you're playing, you're probably going to be stuck like, oh, I didn't get my trigger craft yet. I don't have a profane proxy. You're going to be pressing all the buttons anyway. What's one more? I think that's probably fine. Yeah, I'm gonna be starting something that you could do a variation on, honestly, if you didn't want to press as many buttons, one fewer button. I'm doing my Frostblink Fire Trap Elementalist. And I mean, you can just do, if you want to simplify it and make it more hardcore friendly, you can just do like Zizaran was looking at a Fire Trap only setup as well. You can do just Fire Trap, link it with Ignite Prolif, and then just go all the way down left side, craft all the tanky rares, do all the regular stuff, and just get your spell suppression. You could totally do that if you don't want to play Detonate Dead. But Detonate Dead will just give you the more free damage, if you're willing to press that additional button. But if you're more softcore pilled, the Frostblink feels really, really good. And I mean, Ben played it a couple leagues ago in hardcore, but he was like, and that was when he was having internet issues too, and like he just kept disconnecting. Like he survived a couple disconnects with my build, which was cool. But yeah, he eventually died to just losing his internet in the middle of a crucible, which was bad. But yeah, it's I really, really like the build. I've been playing it my first build guide was 11 months ago, and I've continued to refine the build, take feedback. The first version of the build was pre-damage Fizz taken as meta. So like it was actually before the nerf to Skin of the Lords. So the very first version had an Eldritch Battery Skin of the Lords, which just looks super cringe in 3.24. But yeah, the modern version is very adapted to the modern taste and regular lightning coil taste to hate, whatever. And actually I put out a video earlier today with me doing a T16 map in blue gear, just because there were still some doubters. So yeah, it's that's what I'm starting, and I'm looking forward to it. But my goal, my one thing this league, last league I started SRS and I played it all the way. Like, we got the new specters, and it's Magic Find and Affliction. Like, I actually converted it to, like, I got a Mage Blood eventually. I did a Mage Blood Magic Find SRS Guardian last league, because the specters were so cracked. I still had like 50 million DPS. They were broken. They were just broken. I was like running around with Venters and a Goldworm on a stupid SRS Guardian. I still had 50 million DPS. But my goal this league is to not play my league starter max 1.5 weeks. And as soon as I start looking at find the next build, find like what's the new power that we get from Necropolis, and start looking for the next build. So yeah, I told my chat to don't let me play this more than 2 weeks max. That's my goal.
Wait, you just said 1.5 and then you changed it to 2.
Hey!
Hey, and 3 weeks into the league, when he changes builds, he'll be like,
I just like upgrading. Like, what if it's like I got my league starter, and what if the crafting and the Necropolis, and I get like level 4 power in my gloves because they brought Combinator modifiers, and then I get Enlighten in my helmet because it's gonna be so cool, and it's gonna be all that, and then I'm gonna get a triple fractured scepter, and like, why would I just keep my league starter? It's gonna be so fun. Come on, guys. Just 2.5 weeks. Come on, just get it.
I played Explosive Trap Trickster last league for League Start. And I also was like, I'm just quickly gonna set myself up and do a couple bosses and then re-roll into something else. And it was just such a rabbit hole. And he kept investing, and the goalpost kept shifting, and it was just a fun one to play. And that's also the first time that I actually tried Fire Trap and Acts over Cremation, over doing the classic Armor Brand Cremation setup, which is a little bit more buttons, a little bit more effort. I did Armor Brand Fire Trap, and I felt it was like just almost as good. I mean, like really, really tiny difference, almost not noticeable for someone who's not at the top end of speedrunning. Like, it's so good.
Yeah,
Snap, have you?
All those guys, they're so comfy.
Yeah, but I think like a lot of people shy away from the cremation thing because you need the desecrate and it's like a little bit clunky to use. And yeah, fire trap is just point, click, throw, damage. It's good. It's really good. Snap, do you want to talk a little bit about your starter build, or I guess
Yeah,
your group setup for the league start?
I'm playing Orobot, which is super cool and interesting. Yeah, I don't I don't know. It's Orobot. That's what I'm doing. But the interesting developments in our party is where our group carry is going Bama or Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow for the main DPS. We POB'd a 13.7 billion DPS setup for Blink Arrow, Mirror Arrow, which was pretty cool. So we're gonna be trying that out, seeing how it goes. That's the very cool build. Somehow it got buffed on the patch. Everybody was like, it's going to get nerfed. And then they buffed the prismatic clones, 25% more damage randomly. That was unexpected.
Yeah, I think everyone's just playing bombarding, so they're like, play this one.
Yeah, but you can use both, right? There's an incentive to use both.
Yeah.
Which not very many people do, which I find strange. I think there's a big DPS increase just using 2 6 links and using both, but makes it a little more socket star, but you can get around it.
Wait, are you playing support every league? I was just like curious, or are you rotating the support role? It's like
mostly
you're pulling matches.
Most leagues I'm Orobot. I've just been doing it for so long. If like somebody is like not playing for whatever reason, happens from time to time, we like rotate our 6-man roster. Then we might role swap a couple people around, but for the most part, everybody's playing the same role, and we have been for like, I don't know, 6 years now or something like that. It's just had a very solid team. I'm very grateful everybody's still sticking around and playing. Hopefully they're all still having fun. So yeah. Or I have like I think I counted yesterday. I have like 28 scions that are like level 98 or 99 plus. That are all just Orobots. It's just every league.
It's like you look at your standard characters. It's just the same Orobots.
They're all piling up, and you can see like the different iterations because Orobot's been like nerfed / like changed so many times. You can see like each era of like Orobot. There's like, you know, the Covenant era. There's like the Shavs era, like the Ashes era. Like it just changes so much. And there's like Cluster Jewels era. Like it's just that build has been changed and iterated on so many times. And yeah.
It's really cool. Yeah, Empy and Bazooka are in my chat, making sure you're not leaking too much.
I don't hide anything. If you guys know, I'm an open book. Like there's like, you know, like a gatekeeping thing that people do in PoE, like try to hide some stuff. Like I put out information to our detriment, right? Like this farming strategy that I released on my YouTube channel, like I could keep this a secret and like buy up all the scarabs and like nobody knows. Like and you know, that could benefit me, but like we release all the stuff we're doing because honestly, like if you don't release all that kind of stuff, the questions are like too annoying. And like if you're streaming, you can't have these people asking these questions all the time. So you know you got to like inform them. That's the
not read chat.
I'm just joking. MP, I'm just joking. I know. I'm just joking. No, I love that. Like I think one of the best things is just like how most people are actually. I think the vast majority of people are very open about pretty much everything. Yeah, because it's just like I hate like you know, Mathel hates when people like to say like, oh, Mathel effect to his face, right? Like that sucks. Like when you share something, you're like, this is so cool. You're sharing what you're doing. You want other people to do it as well. You're like, look at how cool this is. This is so fun. I want you to play this build. I hate when I like I'll actually like I've done this before I release a build guide. I'll buy a bunch, and it sucks because the price fixers are probably buying it from me. But I'll buy a bunch of whatever the item is. Like if it's some unique that maybe the price will go up, and then I'll just have them all listed. Like I'll buy a quad tab of them, and I'll have them listed like way below market price. And I'll release the build guide, and then hopefully not price fixers are buying it from me. Just to like, I want more people to be able to play the thing. Like I hate when it sucks when people just come in like, well, the price fixers are gonna ruin it for everybody else. So anyway.
Still to this day, my favorite thing I've ever seen Mathel do, because right at the height of it being like a price fix Mathel's build meta that was happening for a while, were way worse than normal. He spent like half a day with like a one of the Shaper Sword. I can't remember.
It was like a Void Forge or something. I remember
like
this.
a Void Forge, like in his inventory, and then like in his stash, surrounded by some gear that he just didn't mention, and he just watched the price like skyrocket to like 10 times what it was worth over the course of the day. And then like near the end of his stream was like, oh, by the way, I'm not using this at all. I just wanted to fuck the price fixes. And they all just had this sword. It wasn't anything related to any build he was running. He just made them all buy them all up and then didn't make a build. And that was great.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that before. Like, didn't he have like a Void Forge in his? Was it that one or?
It might have been a Void Forge. I think it was a Shiva sword. I don't know. It was something.
Okay, Star Forge, something Forge, right?
Yeah.
I've heard someone, or I mean, there is this new skill gem, this new transfigured skill gem. Which one was it? Kinetic Blast. I'm not looking at it, so I don't know off what. But the Archmage Kinetic Blast, the one that scales off of your max mana, and that scales explosions with added projectiles. So your added projectiles are converted into additional explosions. And like some people have theory crafted that and said that it actually looks kind of juicy as a starter. Have you guys looked at it at all?
Definitely, that's like something I noticed immediately, just because a lot of the one big archetype that Valdo's farmers use is mana stacking, and like this is right up their alley. I know Connor, who's like the mana guy, Connor Converse, or 1 mana left. He like did some he looked at it, and I think it's worse than current mana archetypes, but it is still very solid. Like it's definitely like going to be a really, really good wand build if you like want to go the wand archetype and you really like that skill. Going to be super, super strong. Like the wand with the Indigon, Battle Mage's Cry. It's going to be really solid. Some very good scaling there for sure.
Great. Sort of overwhelmed here with my list. I have a good question that I noticed. So in the interview yesterday, Mark clarified that the call to arms support would only trigger one war cry, and you can't do multiple war cries. But like the first thing that I thought when I saw call to arms was like, I can do 2 war cries with this, but because they do share a cooldown. But non-instant skills get +1 cooldown use if I put a second wind. So can I not use Call to Arms, second wind, and 2 war cries? Then they both have 2 charges, right? And when one goes off, they both have 1, and the other one goes off, they both have 0. But then I guess if one comes off cooldown, then the other one doesn't.
It was in everyone's POB. Everyone was doing it yesterday before the interview. And because it was in the demo, in the Twitter video that we watched.
Exactly.
He was standing there, and 2 war cries went off, and we're like, oh, all right. Infernal Cry, Enduring Cry in my build. Let's go. I'm psyched. And then, he clarified. It was really, really sad. I was excited to have like a good uptime of like great regen, great endurance charges. And I already use Infernal Cry in my build, and having that automated is just, that would have been so comfortable. I'm still going to keep Infernal Cry automated, and that's going to be really good. But yeah, losing the, so what a thing that people are talking about right now is to actually have a weapon swap. We don't know exactly if that'll work, but people are theorizing that you can still weapon swap and do your other Warcry. So if that works and you're willing to press that additional button, but then like, all right, I may as well just press both my Warcries, I guess. But that's a thing, maybe.
Well, the thing is, when it gets triggered, then it doesn't cost you cast time. Sure, you have to weapon swap and press the button and swap back, but you don't have to stand still in order to cry then. Because there's no access to instant war cries outside of the call to arms, which doesn't make it instant, but since it's triggered, it doesn't cost your character cast time. So, how do you stand on that? Like, no access for instant war cries anymore for the people who want to manually use them?
I mean, if you're a melee enjoyer, that's a real big feels bad. That's a real big feels bad.
Karn in shambles. No way, dude.
Yeah, I think he was playing Detonate Dead yesterday.
Somehow Karn has been forced to play DD. What a time to be alive. That is just crazy.
Last week I saw him in his duelist cosplay. Like that's his thing.
This is the saddest timeline, I'll be honest, for Melee. That's definitely not great.
Yeah.
I wanna have sympathy, but I mean, if you keep bringing sticks to gunfights, like it's never been good for Melee.
You can.
So go ahead.
I was just saying, like, I get it. Like, how do you make Melee good in a game where Tornado Shot exists? But there's ways to just make it feel good, right? Like, arguably, you could make melee feel really good potentially for a single target. It could be like an incredible single target archetype that is just really tanky and has, maybe not exceptional damage, but good damage. And then, maybe it doesn't clear like tornado shot or something. I think there's a world where it can fit in to something and have a niche that's worth playing. Where right now, what's melee right now? And like Frostblades and Lightning Strike, which like that's melee. Okay, yeah, right. So yeah, it's a hard problem. Like, what is good melee in a game where we have the stuff that we have? Oh, I can summon 20 skulls that literally heat seek 2 screens away and kill everything. Like, it's definitely a tough thing to balance. But I think they could do it. Remove totems.
Yep.
Yeah, like what I liked about the introduction of the automation gems was that putting a significant cost in terms of mana multiplier and reduced cooldown recovery would reward the people who would then choose to not automate it and to manually use it. But with the Warcry thing, it feels like you're being punished for wanting to manually Warcry. That's a little bit unfortunate, that position. And it's not just melee builds, right? Like anyone could use a Warcry manually. I mean, you still don't have the downsides of the support gem, but yeah, not having access to instant.
The people who manually use it, you mean reward the people that are willing to just numlock trick it on, because that's still just free.
Technically, you're right. Yeah, I don't know how I stand on the numlock thing. I'm probably gonna just not do it, but I've been already shared via Discord an auto hotkey script how I can easily set up my numlock, which I'm not going to use, obviously, but it's out there.
That one. We don't get to use that. If we numlock trick ourselves, they're not happy about it, but we're not breaking the rules.
Yeah, correct.
If you auto hotkey script your numlock trick, you are breaking the rules. That's automation, and you can get banned if you get caught.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm saying I'm not using it. Yeah. I'm just saying there's going to be plenty of people out there who are,
encourage people not to use the script. If it floats around in front of you, that's against the rules. Don't touch it. That's automation. Not allowed.
I mean, the whole conversation around automation macros and auto hotkey and stuff. I mean, that's a dark pit to jump down. It goes very far.
Well,
I tend to not worry about like, oh, are a lot of people being doing it, or are you going to get caught? And I tend to just stick to, is it allowed or is it not allowed? If it's allowed, even if they're unhappy that it's happening, but if it's allowed, if it's not against the rules, fine. I'll encourage everyone to do it. The rules are the rules. If it's not, then I'll be like, nope, don't touch it. Like, if people want to risk it on their own, that's their account. I wouldn't risk my MTX. I'll follow the rules, thanks.
Yeah, in general, as a community member, streamer, content creator, that's the right thing to do, obviously. But there's going to be plenty of people at home who are going to feel like that they're not at risk by doing that, and they're not influencing other people to do it. So, yeah, I don't know. What is the solution to the whole problem? Is it just let everyone have it again? Or, I mean, the numlock thing has been a problem in many games, and basically since Windows exists. Is there any way that you can prevent it from happening?
And he wants to know, would Mark have stood outside the circle and ultimatum?
Definitely. For sure.
Yeah.
For science, yeah. Probably.
Yeah. I mean, the rules, like the balancing the rules of like what's allowed and what's just like a flash macro, right? Like silly stuff. And I think they had a really good line where it's like, as long as you're not doing it publicly, we don't care, but we don't like it, and we'll give you instilling orbs, right? I think that's totally fine. And I think they're trying to kind of just get ahead of that with the left mouse click stuff right now. And they're like, okay, the problem is it is janky as hell to have to bind something to your left click. How do we solve this? The thing for me is their solution to like everything is everything has to come at a cost. Everything. So something that was like previously built in the game basically and like a convenient like, no, now it has to be a 0.6 cooldown with 150% mana multiplier and a support gem. Like, holy shit, we just had that on left click before. Are you kidding me? You think for me to put Steel Skin on left click, I'm gonna use a support gem that costs more mana? Like what the end? It has a longer cooldown until it's leveled up. No way. Everyone's just gonna numlock that. Like I don't know. Like the
Numlock.
yeah. I'm gonna numlock it. Yeah. Right. Like the right solution. I don't know. Like maybe if they don't want it to just be instant, or something, like it's only triggerable, or if you cast it manually, it's instant. I don't know what the right solution would be to like fulfill their vision. But I think the support gem for that solution, like I think there's really cool consequences from that automation gem itself. Like I love that thing being added to the game, but I don't like them also taking away the thing that we used to have and saying you can only do it this way with a cost, because that just kind of feels bad, and I think that's like kind of just a incorrect solution. Like my idea was just like be able to, like where you, like the you click on a skill and it says attack without moving, just add like trigger automatically, right? Like I don't know, it's no different than numlock. Like
The
just
better solution is instilling orbs for your gems. You just
Yeah.
click instilling orb onto your gem, and it says use on cooldown or use on what adjacent
trigger conditions.
like
and
anything.
it has a cost in game. That's perfect. Like there's a
Yeah,
cost in game. They
here's
can
a
make that orb
currency.
cost money. Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing. I don't actually disagree with taking away our left click and making us use the support gem for it, even though I've been very vocal about it being a bad change.
Says the guy
I
that got the
think-
new bone armor.
I think it's a bad change because 90% of the cases I can just numlock trick the thing. So if this is the road we want to take, then you also need to take away the ability to numlock those things on. So because right now all it's done is give me this like awkward at the beginning of every map. I have to turn my numlock on, press the buttons that I want to automatic, hold them down, get rid of the numlock, lift them up. And then I have to do that every time I alt tab or anytime I die or anything that I enter a new map to get the same functionality I had before. And because I can still do that, it's not worth using the support gems. But now the beginning of every map, if I want to use one of those things, is this like awkward, multi-handed, weird thing. So in my mind, it's okay to take away these things. I'm fine with it. You can actually take anything you want away from me and I'll be fine with it. But if taking it away from me just makes this little awkward hand thing at the beginning of every map or anytime I alt tab, well, that's just inconvenient and annoying and I don't want to do it. So either commit and take it away entirely or find a different solution. Like one of those two things.
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that guard skills as implemented right now are weird, where there's basically 3 different ways that it was used. It was you put it on left click and you don't care about it. I'm a softcore player. You know, it's if it's down and I'm gonna get hit, well, F me. Or you put on cast when damage taken, or if you're Ben, then you manually cast Molten Shell right when Shaper does his ball phase because you're Giga Chad, right? Like those are the 3 ways that it's
And
used.
right when any rare hits you because somehow he can see that.
Yeah. He casts Lightning Warp and he knows there's a rare 2 screens away and he immediately presses it because he has the whole map memorized. Like that's the 3 ways it's used. And I guess that if we want to step back and look at it from a game design perspective, do they intend for all 3 of those uses to be what players use? And then what is the way that they intend, like the mechanical cost versus the actual cost benefit of using it? You know, what's your risk analysis there of how you use it and all that? Like I kind of like, like the bone armor solution, which was kind of interesting where they obviate the thing entirely. Like, yeah, bone armor was weird already. Like we have all these guard skills and there's this one thing where you get a guard skill. Okay, well, let's just we're gonna get rid of this thing because you could only really use it on left click. Like how many necromancers use bone armor not on left click? I guess few people if they're using convocation, but
It's like the only place I could go though.
yeah, that's like kind of just where you put it, right? And they kind of redesigned it and they rethought of it from just a design perspective. And I thought that was really elegant. And then maybe they should even just look at guard skills again. That might be even just worth because that's really like the big complaint, right? Is most softcore players just have their guard skill on left click, and maybe that was the problem in the first place. Is that's just how they're used instead of like, hey, all the time, I cast it as like a no mana aura that's giving me 10-15% X damage reduction or something. I don't know.
That really makes me want to like, because I'm completely fine with the trade-off of like having the cooldown recovery and the mana cost. the only thing that bothers me about the change is what Balor said, is that the reality of it is just going to be people are going to use numlock anyway to
It
mitigate
just gets
it.
janky. Yeah.
Yeah, they just bypass the new design, and then B, the socket cost, because there's already enough socket pressure on most builds, right? Like we already kind of struggling to get the skills in that we want, and now adding an additional thing that we need in a lot of builds, yeah, not cool. But I don't know. I kind of like the idea of using things manually a lot and being rewarded for using things manually. It's just the problem, like Valor said, is like people are going to benefit off of that if you allow to numlock further. But maybe like a sort of a third gem, like a meta gem that allows you to use multiple instant skills at the same time or something like that, right? Like if I could Steel Skin and Withering Step and something else at the same time, maybe that would be cool. If instant Warcry is still were a thing.
You get one.
That is definitely something I'm super hyped about for PoE2, and that's something that we don't know the full scope of yet, is those meta gems that allow me to switch on all my reservations with just one button press, or to combine stuff. Maybe we get trigger conditions, like you said, like all kinds of different, not in the shape of instilling orbs for gems, but just with all those different meta gems that allow you to link the craziest interactions.
Oh, you reminded me about the all aura thing. I would love. That's one of the PoE2 features. I mean, I didn't even get to experience it, but that's a quality life thing that I would like.
Especially if you're playing an aura bot every single league. I've done that a few times, like 14 auras to turn on. You end up like weapon swapping and then hotkeying 2 rows worth of auras on the weapon slot, and then you swap back and then use the second one.
Yeah.
I resonate with that for sure. Every league.
So, one thing that the people in the audience definitely want to hear about, I'm sure, is there's an entirely reworked or revamped Atlas passive tree, and we don't have our go-to node anymore for Atlas progression, right? Like everyone was rushing Wandering Path and getting the Atlas completion more or less that way, unless you started late and you got handouts or were in a group. But what's the new strat there? It's just rush Unwavering Vision, get those 20 Atlas passive points, and invest them where? What are you doing?
That is one angle, but I think I actually really want to shout out Havoc here, right? ExileCon finalist Havoc, racer extraordinaire. He's actually been doing a ton of content on like new, Eater Exarch progression trees. And I think the TLDR to that strategy is you want to basically add the easy mechanics that add a bunch of mobs. So like the Strongbox, the Shrine, the Harbinger at the beginning of the tree. And then you do all the normal progression stuff as well, like the connected map as much as you can get. And then the Kirak stuff, obviously that kind of thing, right? So yeah, there's definitely it's like a little bit worse than it was before, but it's like 90% of the speed that it was before. I don't think we'll have any problems pushing the Atlas and sustaining that kind of thing.
You get more
and I mean, we get all those scarabs.
Right? Yeah.
So what Kirak stuff are you referring to?
I heard, I think it was Tuna was talking about like Russian Kirak and going deeper into that more. Like I think he said that it was going towards the 20-pointer, but then also Kirak afterwards for progression.
The main change was that the Kirak node, the Kirak mission chance got doubled from 1% to 2%. I think you can get 26% Kirak chance from the tree now, which is quite a lot. And Kirak is like really OP for progressing your Atlas. If you can really utilize Kirak efficiently, that's like where you're getting all of your completions. Like you can just buy new tiers of like maps if you run out. Like it's really OP. And so a lot of people are doing like rushing a lot of the Kirak wheels as well. So, and then obviously the honorable mention is going to be the Sulfite node, right? You path through the Sulfite chance, and then you grab the 2-pointer for the increased movement speed and damage and max res. Like I think a lot of people have already talked about that. It's definitely something that a lot of people are going to be doing for 2 points, right?
That one's so MVP, especially early on. But like in hardcore, that was my go-to whenever I had like a Guardian up or something like that. Yeah, just put that on, put a Nico on, and get free build power.
Yeah, with like no investment, right? It's 40% spawn chance and then 2 points to enable the effect. So like there's just literally no reason not to take this on a progression tree, I think.
Yep.
I've
And you can still
already-
do your early betrayal progression. That was the big thing before, right? If you wanted your betrayal progression, particularly with XP or your unveils, you couldn't go for Nico. But now it's just you can have both. It's a freebie.
I've already gone over this a few times, but I keep saying it everywhere and as much as I possibly can because it's a really big like mental shift. Really important to look at the fact that we've got 3 trees now and know that we're going to unlock at least one of them in a reasonable time frame. That everybody's first tree should just be a progression tree. Like there's no reason to be like, oh, I'm gonna hard farm Breach or Legion or something like that and be like, oh, I'm gonna build a tree like that and then try and progress. You'll just be holding yourself back. Build a progression tree. Build a completion, get me through tree, because you will just be able to swap to the second one when it's time to start farming. And then when you change strategies, you'll be able to swap to the third one. It won't be until your 4th Atlas strategy that you have to respec anything. So
To add on to that, I think the other big thing is previously people would sit on 2, sometimes 3 void stones for a long time. I think you'll very much want to get 4 now sooner for those chance for tier 17 drops.
as
I
quick as
disagree.
possible.
I disagree. I think
disagree?
like I totally disagree. I think that for a lot of people, like based on the way that they're saying like the woodstones work, I think there's actually way less of an incentive for somebody who puts sextants on their map, right? You are way less incentivized to actually get all 4 stones than you were before, because obviously sextants very good, so you want 4 stones. But now it's just converted to T17 map drop chance, and the way it works is you have like a really like a much higher chance to receive T17s. Like the first one you drop within a map, and any subsequent drops are much lower chance. So if you're in a situation where you put a lot of stuff on your map, if you're doing like Legion or Breach or any variety of strategies, right, in T16s, it might be that last Void Stone or even 2 Void Stones perhaps like aren't very impactful, because you're dropping a T17 anyways, and the further drops are just gonna like not do a whole lot like that. I could definitely see that happening.
That's fair. Yeah. It's kind of I like them encouraging you to complete things. But yeah, that makes sense.
It could go either way, honestly. Like it could be that like the
Yeah.
first one is like still super rare, and so like having that stone, is very encouraged. But I also could see where they're not as rare, and therefore like if you're getting like the 1 per map, if you're like juicing your map, then you're less incentivized to actually go and get that last void stone.
Yeah, yeah, totally makes sense without sextants, and you just like and you get the 5-way map device really early now, right?
No, it's you get your
It's after T17, right?
Yeah, it's a T17 clear, and the way they're describing it is it's content between current like Uber Elder and Maven and Pinnacle bosses. So it should be harder to get your 5th slot than it might be before, based off like kind of where they're pegging it, right? Because
in trade, you can't just easily buy it by buying into a 5-way, but not to a 4-way. But in solo self-found, it's obviously a huge buff that within your natural progression, you get the 5th map slot instead of having to go into Legion. Which obviously a lot of people want to go into Legion. There's powerful timeless jewels. There's a lot of good stuff there, but it always felt weird that I was forced into that for an essential part of my endgame strat, which is the 5th map slot.
And now I want 12 map slots. I want 12 scarab slots. There are so many options.
I have another quick segue question, and that was with the Void Stones granting chances for the tier 16s to be upgraded to tier 17s as they drop. The Scarab that we were shown, the influencing Scarab of Conversion, where the tier 14 plus maps in the area have a chance to drop as Guardian, Conqueror, or Synthesizer map instead, that's taking away from my tier 17 map drops then, so you wouldn't want to combine that. Any clue? Well, I guess that's a question I should ask the developers, obviously.
Yeah, we don't know what the order that'll be in.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Like this was shown on the stream.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If I could see it being that way.
Without knowing the order, we can't tell whether it's going to make it less 17s or whether the 17s are going to overtake the Guardians. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the real question is like how many 17s are actually going to be dropping. You know, like if like Snap said with the rarity, especially if that kicks in real hard after the first drop, then you know how much is it really affecting you? I don't know. Like you might just be happy, even if you have that skirb, you might be in the price of tier 17s. You might be happy that it's tier 17 drops anyway. You know,
I think they said on one of the podcasts, I don't know which one. This is like just comes to my mind. They said like they're
1 of
pegging,
10. Yeah.
they're pegging it at like 1 to 5 maps is like what they're after.
Okay.
I think is what they said. Like 1 in 5 maps at T16s. So
Which will be like, I think solo juices are going to end up getting 2 or 3 per map, but we'll see, I guess.
yeah. And when I say 1 in 5, not that 1 in every 5 maps you find, like 5 maps total. Like every 5
Yeah,
maps.
run
you
5 maps to
run
get
5
one.
maps to run 1 T17. Yeah. Like, or ish. That's kind of what they think they were trying to peg it at.
So Ubers are going to be like the theory, and what it sounds like is Ubers are going to be pretty hard to get to, and people aren't going to be chain farming them as much, I guess. Well, I mean, the people with the money will just buy all of the shards, right? So I guess that's the question is like how that economy shakes out will be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to be doing T17s for their slots, so I actually think you're going to see like a lot of service market in that, like people buying carries, because not every build is going to be able to do these maps. That's like the main thing, and I think as a result, you're going to see a lot of those fragments that are generated on services, and all of those are going to funnel up to people that are actually doing Ubers. It's kind of weird. It takes 5 fragments. Like it's yet to be seen, of course, the rarity, but yeah. There's still a big problem in that the Ubers are just their value is kind of like sidelined by Valdos and Reliquary keys. Like they took a stab at it with the div cards this league, but I feel like that's a fourth of the problem. The real problem is Valdos and Reliquary keys giving boss uniques. So
I'm
it's like-
hoping that the amount of Valdos and Reliquary keys that we see are way lower this league because of losing our fairy juice or whatever it is.
Affliction, yeah. I mean, totally, it's going to be way, way, way less. But I still think that there's an inherent problem in the way Valdo's being able to just circumvent boss uniques. Like that's just, I actually have a lot of problems with Valdo's in the way it's like currently balanced. I think it's like really cool idea, but I have some like huge problems with the current balancing of it personally. Because like being able to get Forbidden Flesh and Flame, I think that's really stupid. I don't know why you can get Forbidden Flesh and Flame out of that, right? It's a Uber unique or whatever, like XR. Like
is there an original sin too?
No, there's not. So it's just like
isn't?
why is original sin excluded and Forbidden Flesh and Flame get included? It's should just be no boss uniques.
In fact,
really,
people tried to put original sin on it and they said no, which is
they said no.
That's the right call.
Yeah.
But why wasn't that call made for some other things?
or Progenesis, like this is literally Uber unique. Like more, it's rare to get a regular Progenesis than a foil one, which is just like, well, why? I don't know. If they want to have
all my uniques this league were foiled.
Like, if they want to have bossing, have identity, you can't have this stuff coming out of the Valdos keys and the Reliquary keys. But like, I don't know how they go backwards on this. Like, people paid $500 to select their thing. Like, I don't know how they. I don't know.
Refund them.
I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, the same way they do it with the diff cards that they discontinue, right? They delete the diff card from the game. They approach the people who paid for the diff card with the supporter pack and let them design a new one, which is a lot of extra work for them. But to be fair, with
designing a new
the
Valdos
system
won't be
that
that much work, though, right?
Exactly, with the system that they're putting in place, they've consistently made it easier for themselves to do that sort of stuff, right? All the way in the back in the day, they did the unique designs, which was super work intense. There was a lot of back and forth between the supporter and the designer, and in the end, they barely broke even, if at all. They probably made a loss on it, right? But then the diff cards were a little bit more streamlined, where they, got the drop down list and the entire process of getting it approved was a lot easier and streamlined. And now with the Valdos, it's like probably not that much human interaction on their side needed, right? Like it's just one final check. Yep, this is okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible they could like give a refund, but yeah, I think like the whole div card, the boss div cards going away from stack deck and that kind of thing is just like scratching the surface. And like the real big offenders here are Reliquary keys and Valdos. It's just crazy. I mean, on top of that, like, I don't know, like the rarity of these things is always changing, like the contents of the box, right? The Valdos box based on the new submissions. But I think like
Mhm.
it's my hunch, it's my suspicion, conspiracy theory that the weightings of the items is calculated post modifiers. And what I mean by that is like you take a mage blood, if you've submitted mage blood for your reward, and you put a bunch of modifiers on it that make it, at the end it says 9,000% more common. I think that the rarity of the mage blood appearing in the box is calculated after the modifiers and not before, which means that you're going to be seeing like it's like the amount of mage bloods and stuff that's generated via the box is like way higher than other mechanics.
I mean, sure felt like it. I opened a lot of those this league.
I know, like I think Cute Dog or something. Cute Dog opened like 150. He got like 5 mage bloods, and it's just like, huh, like, huh, and
Yeah,
I like
that's a lot.
it's just the weightings of the stuff is like really out of whack. And I think like I've been told it got like a little bit better as like more and more submissions got added, but like it was seriously out of whack like at the very beginning. So hopefully it's like a lot better this time around.
Well, they have obviously a much larger number of things that can be in the box, so bigger variants, and they said that they're adjusting the rarity of the drop based on like what can be in it, right? So maybe they are not that common anymore, or that technically they should be more common if the average outcome is worse, right? If what they say is true.
So there's a situation that can happen, right? If a bunch of people put in, let's say, what's a really common item? Let's say Veil of the Night, right? Like that's the box, right? That some guy submitted, and he puts it in, but he doesn't put any modifiers on it, and that's like baseline Veil of the Night rarity. But then you have a bunch of people that put in Mage Bloods and Headhunters, and those have 9,000% rarity increase, drop chance applied to it. That can create a situation in which the expected value of that Valdo's box is like way higher than than it should be, because I think that the item calculation is calculating it before the modifiers and not after, and that's causing like it to skew towards the better items. Right, that's the main thing. But yeah, that's just like a side rant. Sorry, it's a little off topic.
No, it's very insightful. I was not aware of some of the things that you said there.
Affliction is contributing to this problem because of the blue juice was generating currency items, and those are a currency item, and so it was dropping like just fucking, I don't know, like 5-10 Valdo's boxes a map. It was like way too much. So we're gonna have to like hold our reserve judgment and see how it is without Affliction. We'll probably be a lot more in line with Affliction gone for sure. It's tough to contextualize the rest of the game with Affliction, right? Just because of how OP it is.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Like in a game where I was turning off Chaos under 3 as a solo player.
Yeah.
It's hard to know how that's going to play next league when I expect to be picking up single Chaos Orbs again. Right?
The funniest thing to come out of Affliction was somebody ran some math, and it was not worth hovering heavy belts. It was not worth your time to hover heavy belts to the chance of getting a mage
leathers.
Blood. Or leather belts.
Real big juices had turned off both belts.
If you turned all of them off and just simply mapped faster and looted only divines, you're actually making more money, which is just like something's really wrong here, guys. Yeah.
Oh, but it's because no, there was inflation on both sides.
It's
but the mage bloods were never that low.
Divines off the floor, all in stacks, and then just leave and launch a new map.
Yeah, you just go next faster, and you don't have to bog yourself down hovering through the 50,000 belts that are on the floor. So yeah.
Crazy league.
That's one for the record books for sure.
Yeah.
I think the rebound from that I think is going to be really funny, because I know that there's some new players that I've talked to. They're like brand new to Path of Exile, and this is like their first league, and they magic find, and then they have like, they found 3 mirrors and like 2 mage bloods, and I'm just like, oh my god, like this is not like you're gonna play next league and be depressed. It's just funny. Yeah.
Experienced players like us are going to be like, oh yeah, well, I remember that one league that was disgusting, but new players are just going to be wrecked.
Affliction was your first league, be ready. That's all I'm going to say. It's just the game is different.
We're looking like Ritual Ultimatum into Expedition.
I mean, Yeah, I was gonna say we survived Sentinel into Calandra, so I think we
No,
can
we
do
didn't.
this.
I went away.
Yeah, we should extend
Did
break.
Did we really? I mean, yeah. Expedition and Calandra were rough for the population. It was bad. But I
Wait,
think
what
like
was before Expedition
before Expedition, I think that was Ultimatum. right?
313? Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But like if we just had Necropolis, I'd be worried. Like if Necropolis on its own, I don't know what this mechanic is going to be like. I don't know how noodly it's going to be. I don't know what the power is going to be like. My assumption, just based on historical data, is that it's going to be like tuned in an uncomfortable way initially, and they're going to tune it up again. They do that all the time. But we have the scarabs and everything, and that's what has me encouraged. Like the quality of life minus left mouse button and the scarabs. I'm generally like, I think basically everyone's really excited for this league. But the big question is just how fun is Necropolis going to be? How profitable is it actually going to be? I mean, you're going to make insane items, right? But it's going to be a very noodly mechanic, I think. And I seeing how that plays out, especially discovery phase, is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, what fascinates me about it is that it's in the beginning of the item creation process, right? Whereas with Harvest, often you kept doing your item and like guiding it through a process, and Harvest was also almost the last thing that you did. Like with this, you just make an item and then you are further processing it with the other crafting methods that we have with Eldritch crafting, with the new Veiled Orb, and yeah. No, I'm excited to see what we can do with Necropolis, and it's really, really hard to judge without having played it, right? Like, we've only seen a tiny little bit of the crafting mechanic in Necropolis. It's really, I mean, at this point in the Harvest League, right, like before start, did we know how insane it was going to be? No, I don't think so.
I'm super happy about Necropolis. I think it touches on a lot of different bases, which I think is super smart in this league mechanic. What I mean by that is there's an in-map component, right? There's a crafting component, and then there's there's like a juicer component to it. There's like different facets of the league mechanic, and I think that's healthy. I think personally, I quite dislike when they neglect one area. Like for example, Sanctum, while it might be as like super fun league mechanic and that kind of thing, I still think it would have been like cooler if there was like a little mini encounter I had to do in the map, like to engage, kill a pack of mobs, whatever. Even if it's like rudimentary, that would be more enjoyable for me, because like different people enjoy different sections of the game. And I think with Necropolis, they have like different sections, like different places that they're hitting on, where depending on the kind of thing that you're doing, there's like a thing you can gauge with, right? So if you're a Giga Crafter, you're going to be making the huge gravestones. If you're a juicer, you're going to be using the all flames and like replacing all the stuff. And like, I think it's super smart, and I definitely am excited for that.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. Yeah, a large percentage of the population is unhappy when it's an only out of map mechanic. And it sounds like they've hopefully learned from that. I don't think we've seen an entirely out of map mechanic, although Crucible was awful. How much did you guys do Crucible? That actual Crucible mechanic?
No, thank you. Pass.
As much as I had to. No, honestly, I would have liked Crucible if the monsters were a little bit more rewarding, where there's like getting nothing out of like standing still, channeling for so long, having these super overtiered monsters, and then only having delayed rewards, which were also, heavily RNG gated. Depending on how much you interacted with it, you would never get what you were looking for. Yeah. I definitely am on Snap's boat here, and I think we all are. Like, leagues should have different aspects to it, and like everyone who plays should get something. And what I'm missing from Necropolis, which is obviously alleviated by the expansion that accompanies it, is there's no like endgame boss big thing that we're working towards, but it's going to be plenty of endgame bossing to be done in Necropolis outside of the league mechanics, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the combination of the core game rework with Necropolis is really, really good. And I think it's just, if it was Necropolis by itself, it would feel, I think, just a little anemic to me. But yeah, the scarabs and all that, and the T17, I'm really excited now.
We had this, without wanting to overstretch a little bit, I'm very aware of the time, and I'm gonna conclude soon. But one more thing just came up in my head is I was recently talking to Elidey and Yosis and Slippery Jim on Slippery Jim's extended discussion, and no, I completely blank. Well, I completely forgot it. No, I got it. Here. How do you stand on optional league mechanics? Do you think a league mechanic should make its presence known without you opting in? Because Leidy's stance on that was, and I think that's a very solid one, is I already opted into the league the moment I click create character in that league. So like, why should there be something that I need to click in the map in order to feel the effects of the league? I could still choose to walk past it and not interact with it, but there should be some impact felt from a league. Where you stand, like fully optional leagues, fully oppressive leagues, or back and forth between leagues? I like that smile snap.
I have a
What are
strong
your
opinion,
thoughts?
so maybe I have the strongest opinion here. I think that it's going to be a huge disaster that you're not able to opt out of the league. And I think the primary reason for that is I think GGG is really, really bad historically at tuning the difficulty of mobs when the league mechanic comes out. That is
That's
like
fair.
historically, it has always been a problem. You look at Legion, the Red Mist. If you were there, you know. If you look at like what is it? When Betrayal came out, the fist, the Haku slam, the door, one-shotting people, like that was a huge problem. Like, and there's just dozens of examples of this that have gone, that have come from the past, 10, 20 leagues, and I
Probably
just
close to
feel
almost
like
every league. Yeah.
yeah, like there's always a problematic mob. I mean, in Affliction, the poison flower DD, right? And it's not like I can just ignore it. If like this is a problem in hardcore or whatever, then and you can't just opt out. Like there's going to be some serious issues, right? Like if there's a mob that's causing this like bullshit deaths, like it's not going to be good. That's my only concern. And like I think that is for me the strongest argument against being able to opt out of it. Is just like if there's some overtuned mob or some overtuned modifiers that's like you can't opt out of it. Like what do you do? And to extend on that, when they said that, like, what do you do if a mob is too hard? And they just told us to simply wait a couple minutes and it resets. I thought that was
Wait a
really
couple of
problematic.
minutes.
That
Like,
sounded
No, thank you.
insane to me.
Sure,
Yeah.
that sounded insane to me as well. Like, surely
Yeah.
you should just be able to like click a button and reset it in the campaign. Like, if I'm in the mud flats and like my mud flats are giga running me down, one-shotting me, and I have to just stand there, like, I'm not. If I'm a new player, I'm gonna log out and never come back to Path of Exile. But like, I don't know. That's just I have some concerns, some reservations about that. The tuning, if it's not correct, it's not gonna be great.
I'm almost on the same boat. In theory, I don't think you should ever be able to opt out of the league mechanic. I think it would be best if it was balanced well right from the beginning, that the league mechanic was impactful on me all the time.
Utopia,
But that's
right?
not the reality.
Yeah,
The reality is it's never balanced right. There's always like a day 3 or a week 1 patch that's like, that's better. And just not being able to dodge it might cause quite a few problems.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a league where they didn't tune down some monsters after the first couple of days. Like
It
I
hasn't
actually,
happened. It's just crazy. Every league, there's some crazy stuff that's just one-shotting you, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
like,
it's
I mean,
it's every league.
the meme in hardcore is like you just don't click on the league mechanic because it gets you killed, and it's like it's just true. Every league, there's always something that's just out there to just blow you up. And
The last time there wasn't one, I think, was Syndicate. And then the meta in hardcore became run white maps scoured until you could get the underneath Syndicate, the one that like makes you go downstairs, and then go run your maps and never go downstairs because that one wouldn't jump you, and just leave it on the map forever and never interact with it again until it's balanced.
No, Betrayal, but yeah, Betrayal did. It was the fist, right? The fist in the door. It would like punch you. It would one-shot
Yeah,
you.
well, that's the last time we had one we couldn't avoid. But
Oh
then
yeah,
but then they could
Oh.
avoid it in hardcore.
I
They
see.
would spawn
block
maps
it.
until it was the downstairs one,
Yeah.
and then it would always be that one until you completed it, and they just stop using
That was a design flaw, clearly. It should have been always random for every map.
Intervention every single map with Haku coming in.
I kind of like that tiptoeing around, like, being like those first meters in the map where you're not sure, is it transportation, is it intervention, is it research, is it the fortification? And
I mean, once Betrayal was tuned, it was fine. It's just on release they can't I don't remember who it was, the jargon maybe that had the white crystals. They would instantly kill you. And there was like no timer or anything. Yeah. I don't know. Like I like the idea. I think everyone just kind of likes the idea of like, okay, I'm playing the league. But if it doesn't feel good all the time, then that's just or like, you know, if you can be strategically playing around it, that's fine. I think their intention, right, is like, oh, I see Roas and I see zombies and I see, you know, 100, I see turbo frenzy charge speed and I see, you know,
Don't give it to
10%
rowers.
10% physical damage reduction. I know which one I'm putting on which, right? But yeah, the whole waiting and not being able to reset, I feel like that's the thing they're going to go back on, or maybe you get like a bonus slot or something and say, hey, I don't want to put turbo frenzy charge on any of these things in mud flats. Maybe, I don't know. I think that's a thing that has to get looked at if it's implemented like the scary way that we think it might be.
Yeah. Maybe I'm also like a sort of rare masochist, and I'm actually okay with the idea that every once in a while I'll have to abandon a map and, you know, drop the idea of being able to complete it and just eat it up and do the next one, maybe.
And that's the ethical hardcore philosophy, right? That is you know, you just can't do that. That's not for you. That's for that gets deleted.
It won't be you can't complete the map. It's you'll be strolling along and then something will blow up and you'll be dead and then you'll have to make a new character. That's the reality.
That's content.
Yeah, I guess that's content for sure. Content value.
Right. So I think we covered a large ground. There's tons of great topics that we discussed. I think we made a lot of awesome points. But is there anything that you would like to still give the people in chat as advice starting in the new league that hasn't been mentioned? I'll start. It's like, guys, if you're using LUTBot, if you use a logout macro, make sure that before the leaks, ideally tomorrow, right, you go in there and you disable the force logout keybind and you bind it to /exit so that you're not on the login mask and you don't have to queue again after you log out, so that you can, you know, directly log back in after you logged out. Because that's something that often gets forgotten.
I only ever use /exit.
Right, like as a little bit of a closing round, right? Like you don't have to if you don't have anything that you want to say. We've already given tons of points. You can also just shout out something that you're going to do. Subtracting, you got a POG video coming up.
Oh, that's Snap was going. Let Snap go.
Yep.
Have fun. Make sure to have fun, guys. Don't be preoccupied about what other people are doing. Other people are farming. Other people's builds are more better, whatever. Just like have fun. That's it.
That's a general truth, not just specifically for Path of Exile, but I'd also like to extend that to content creation and to life.
Yeah, I mean, I 100%. Yeah, indeed, have fun. 17 hours a day locked in hideout. You get to have fun. Yeah, indeed is his trader. I 100% agree. I think that's particularly coming off of Affliction. I think, you know, everyone's been echoing it. It's going to be such a different game, but that's also the beauty of the game is if you reframe it that every single league is either a new puzzle or just new experiences or something new to play. It's like kind of playing a new game, and the joy of the game, like, you know, a lot of people when they first start playing PoE, they come from other games that may not have seasons or leagues or anything. They're like, why do you just reset the whole game? I want to keep my character and keep playing in standard. And we're like, nah, the most exciting thing is losing everything that we had and starting over again. And if you have it framed properly, it's like you're playing a new game every single time. And it's so refreshing and fun. Particularly, I love what Snap said of just don't pay attention to what other people are playing. If you can get a friend to play PoE, it's just so fun. It's really hard, but at least, you know, hang on in one of these guys' chats or something and just like sharing your accomplishments and what you do. That's the fun thing, you know, connecting with other people and just having a good time. And yeah, just really focus on that.
Positive mental attitude for the win. Balor, what do you have for us?
I got nothing. I just want to sleep until league launch. I'm done now. We're doing Poison SRS and I'm excited. And now I just want to go to bed and wake up and start. There's too much to do. I got nothing else. I just want to start playing.
All right.
He's a blaster.
Maybe I'll still make a video that I teased already. I think on the last podcast with all the little things that you can invest time into to get better at running through the acts that really don't help you that much, because the most important things is that you know your progression well, that you minimize your downtime in town, and that you kind of rush through the layouts, right? And you know at which point you need to be at which level threshold. But like there's these little things like the vendor walking and the, pre-opening the map so you can hover over the waypoint, then closing it again. So when it pops open from hitting the waypoint, you can directly click where you want to travel and stuff like that. And these little things are so exciting because they're easy to practice in isolation. And that's what makes them so fun for me. And they're really rewarding. Like if you do a successful town run with the vendor running, it feels so rewarding. But, it's not really something you should invest a whole lot of time into if you're not good with the other things. So don't follow my example because I'm wasting time doing that, but I personally have fun, and that's the most important part, as we just heard. So right, if you guys enjoyed the podcast episode but you came in during the middle, this will be available in full on Spotify and YouTube. As always, there is a Fated ARPG podcast YouTube channel that I'm currently building, where I am a little bit behind on re-uploading the VODs after I do the post-processing and all that. And that's all I wanted to say. Subtractum, you're streaming now, right?
I am. I'm live. There's
right.
people talking to me right now.
Right. Yeah, but it could have been like, oh, I haven't eaten in 8 hours. I'm gonna go now as well. So no, that's great because I have to go. And thank you guys for joining. It was awesome to have you, Subtractum. Great that you made your first appearance here, and I'm hoping that you'll visit us back again, that we're not that terrible in terms of hosting a podcast.
It was great.
And yeah, Snap, also awesome to have you. Great that you came back after that terrible last episode with Last Epoch. No, it was also fun. I'm just joking because we're all so excited about Path of Exile now, and we were excited about Path of Exile when we were doing that Last Epoch episode, but there wasn't really that much to talk about in terms of Path of Exile. Anyway, thank you guys. Have a wonderful league start. I'll see you soon again. And I have a little bit of a snippet of a teaser that I'm going to play before the outro, and then I'll see you next time.
I'm Mark Roberts, game director.
Oh yeah, right. We have the episode coming up on Monday evening with Big Ducks and Lighty. Go to linktr.ee/fatedpodcast.
Frogs, and even more frogs. Thankfully, we have frogs, and even more frogs. We're looking forward to frogs, and even more frogs. In Path of Exile Necropolis, frogs, and even more frogs.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.
Yeah, I didn't have time to do a verse for Mark yet. I need to go to this interview, and like I don't know whether I'll have time for that. But the frogs, just like directly when I heard that, I was like, that is a rap.
I've already taken that to make it my sub message for the league. I keep saying frogs, and more frogs.
Yeah, no, I want to turn it into an entire song, but I don't think I'll manage before league start because there's so many other things that I still want to do, and tomorrow is my last chance to socialize. So my sister's coming over. I'm making pizza. So, and my league schedule, my sleep schedule is already in league start mode, right? Like I slept basically until like 5 hours before the podcast.
Perfect. I was awake like an hour before. All right. I gotta run though.
Yeah, same. Thanks as always. Looking forward to talking to you and Lighty and Big Ducks on Monday, and remind me to have an episode planned for the first weekend because I don't have that yet.
See you.
Talk to you soon. Bye bye.